I was watching cartoons with my 8-year-old granddaughter when a terrified scream echoed from the basement. Dad, please help me. My blood ran cold. It was my daughter's voice. I turned to my granddaughter, and her face had gone pale. She'd heard it too. Before I could move, my son-in-law looked up and said, "Dad, you're hearing things that aren't there." But when I opened the basement door and stared into the darkness below, I realized someone in this house had been lying for a very long time. This story begins with family, but it won't end the way you expect. Before we dive in, drop a quick comment for me. How are you feeling right now? In just one word. I genuinely read every response. Just so you know, some details have been fictionalized for storytelling, but the message at the heart of this is what I hope resonates with you. At 61, carrying the last box of my life into my daughter's house, I had no idea the man smiling at the door had already turned my refuge into a trap. The Austin July heat pressed against my back as I climbed the front steps of the North Austin home, cardboard corners digging into my palms. 18 months since Alma passed. 18 months of rattling around our empty house, every room echoing with her absence. When Margot offered me the guest room, I'd said yes before she finished the sentence. My daughter stood in the doorway 34, and always the diplomat, her warm smile exactly like her mother's used to be. Behind her, Bryce Thornton extended a hand impeccably dressed in expensive casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly pension. 39 years old, confident, successful. Everything a father should want for his daughter. "Welcome home, Dad," he said, that smile spreading across his face. I shook his hand and noticed what I'd noticed at their wedding. 5 years earlier, the smile never reached his eyes. Not once. "Grandpa," 8-year-old Wren came running, gap-toothed grin splitting her face, small arms wrapping around my leg. "You're staying forever, right? You promised—" I set the box down carefully and ruffled her hair. "I promised I'd stay, sweetheart." Bryce's gaze dropped to the box. Through the cardboard flaps, the corner of a silver picture frame caught the hallway light. "What's in there, Dad?" His voice carried that same pleasant tone he always used, pleasant and final. I opened the box, lifted out Alma's wedding photo. The silver frame felt heavier than it should. My wife smiled up at me, frozen at 23, white dress catching sunlight that existed 40 years ago. "Just some personal items," I said. "Thought I'd put this in the living room if that's—" "Dad," Bryce stepped closer, lowering his voice. Margot had moved into the kitchen, and Wren was examining my suitcase. "Could you keep that photo in your private room? We don't want Wren asking too many questions about her." I looked at him. About her grandmother. About death, grief. You know how children fixate. He placed a hand on my shoulder, friendly, firm. "Your room is lovely, plenty of space for personal items. Better that way." Margot returned with iced tea, and I saw her glance between us, reading the tension she'd learned to smooth over in 5 years of marriage. "Bryce is right," she said softly. "Wren's been having nightmares lately, maybe when she's older." I carried the box upstairs to the guest room, my room now, and placed Alma's photograph on the dresser where only I would see it. Through the window, I watched Bryce in the driveway below, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. That box, that photograph, Alma's smile frozen in silver frame. I didn't know yet that Bryce Thornton was building a narrative, and I was playing my part perfectly. 1 month passed. August heat settled over Austin like a wet blanket, and I fell into the rhythm of Margot's household. Morning coffee with my daughter before she left for work as a paralegal downtown. Afternoons with Wren helping with summer reading. Evenings when Bryce came home and the house went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. I missed Alma most at night. The guest bed was comfortable, the room pleasant, but at 2 in the morning on August 14th, I lay awake staring at her photograph in the darkness, remembering the way she used to steal the covers. I got up for tea. The house was silent as I descended the stairs in my robe, bare feet, cold against hardwood. The kitchen light hummed when I flicked it on. That's when I heard it. A woman weeping, clear, rhythmic, like someone sobbing beneath my feet. I froze, teacup in hand. The sound came from below, from the basement. Margot and Bryce's bedroom was on the 2nd floor, Wren's beside it. The crying wasn't coming from upstairs. I set down the cup and walked to the basement door in the 1st floor hallway. The sound grew louder with each step. A woman's voice broken with grief, the kind of weeping that comes from somewhere beyond consolation. The kind Alma's sister made at the funeral. My hand reached for the doorknob. The crying stopped, not faded, not quieted. Stopped like someone had pressed pause on a recording, Complete silence where sound had been 1 second before. I stood there in the dark hallway, hand on the doorknob, heart hammering against my ribs. I turned the knob slowly. Locked. If you've ever stood in absolute darkness, hand on a door listening to silence where sound should be, the difference between fading and stopping. This was stopping. I went back upstairs. Didn't sleep. Morning came with the smell of Bryce's expensive coffee. I found him in the kitchen already dressed for work, scrolling through his phone. Sleep well, Dad. I poured coffee with steady hands. I heard something last night. Around 2, a woman crying, coming from the basement. Bryce looked up, face showing perfect concern. You were dreaming, Dad. The house has excellent soundproofing. You can't hear anything from the basement. It wasn't a dream. The mind plays tricks when we're grieving. He set down his phone, gave me his full attention. I read about this. Auditory hallucinations are common in widowers your age, especially. I know what I heard. Margot appeared in the doorway, already reading the tension. What's wrong? Your father had a bad dream, Bryce said smoothly. Thought he heard someone crying. She looked at me, and I saw the choice happening behind her eyes. Believe her father or her husband. She chose. You've been under a lot of stress, Dad. The move, adjusting to a new place. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Hoffman about something to help you sleep. I don't need sleeping pills, I said. I need to know what I heard. Bryce stood checking his watch. The basement is just storage and utilities. I'll show you later if you want. But, Dad... He paused at the door, and that smile appeared again. Excellent soundproofing. You can't hear anything from the basement. Whatever you heard came from somewhere else. He left. Margot squeezed my shoulder and followed him upstairs to get ready for work. I sat alone in the kitchen, coffee going cold in my hands. Excellent soundproofing, Bryce said. Then why did I hear it? And why did the weeping know exactly when I touched the door? The question about soundproofing haunted me for 3 weeks. But it took me that long to understand that Bryce Thornton wasn't cruel by accident. He was performing cruelty with an audience, and I was watching him build something I couldn't yet name. Late August brought cooler evenings and Friday family dinners around the dining table. Warm yellow light from the overhead fixture. Wren drawing on her placemat with crayons. Margot serving baked chicken and roasted vegetables. Bryce at the head of the table, napkin perfectly folded in his lap. I asked a simple question. Casual, the kind of thing anyone asks over dinner. What did we have for dinner last Friday? Margot paused mid-bite. I think it was salmon. Salmon with asparagus, I confirmed. And that lemon butter sauce you make. Bryce set down his fork and looked directly at Margot, his voice carrying just the right note of gentle concern. Dad's forgetting things again. I blinked. I'm not forgetting. I'm asking what we had. You asked the same question 3 times this week. Bryce smiled that smile. It's okay, Dad. Memory issues are normal at your age. I hadn't asked 3 times. I'd asked once, right now. Margot's eyes flicked between us, that diplomat's instinct activating. Dad, are you feeling okay? I'm fine. I kept my voice level. I was just making conversation. Of course you were. Bryce returned to his chicken. Subject closed, narrative established. Wren looked at me across the table, crayon frozen in her small hand. She'd been listening. That night I sat in my room with Alma's photograph and thought about the past month. How many times had Bryce made comments like that? How many times had he suggested I was confused, forgetful, not quite present? I pulled out my phone, the old smartphone Alma had helped me set up 2 years before she died, and opened a new note. Started typing. August 28th, Friday dinner. Asked about last week's meal. Bryce said I'd asked 3 times this week. I hadn't. Witnesses Margot Wren. Then I scrolled back through my mental catalog of the past weeks and added more entries. August 22nd lunch. Asked if mail had come. Bryce told Margot I'd asked 4 times. I'd asked once. Witnesses Margot. August 18th morning. Mentioned needing to buy coffee. Bryce said I'd told him yesterday. I hadn't. Witnesses Margot, landscaper and yard. August 14th evening. Asked where Wren's school was located. Bryce said I'd forgotten again. I never knew in the first place, we'd never discussed it. Witnesses Margot Wren. 6 instances in 4 weeks. Every single one with witnesses present. Never when we were alone. I saved the note under a title he'd never think to look for Alma's recipes. If someone in your life tells you you're forgetting, but only when others can hear, you're not losing your mind. You're watching someone build a cage around you, one witness at a time. September arrived with Texas heat that refused to break. The 14th fell on a Saturday, and by evening, the weather finally turned. Rain pounded the windows and sheets thunder rolling across North Austin like artillery. Bryce had gone out around 6. Some business dinner he'd mentioned that morning. Margot was upstairs in the bedroom on the phone with her sister. I sat in the living room with Ren watching her favorite cartoon, the one about the talking animals who solve mysteries. The rain hammered harder, wind rattled the window frames. Then from beneath the floor, perfectly clear above the storm. "Dad, help me." Margot's voice, every syllable exact. The way she pronounced dad with that slight rise at the end. The urgency and help, the precise pitch and timbre I'd known for 34 years. From the basement, Ren went rigid beside me. Her small body began trembling, violent shakes that started in her shoulders and spread down her arms. She grabbed my sleeve with both hands, fingers digging into the fabric. I was already moving, up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, despite my 61-year-old knees. Down the hallway to the master bedroom. Margot sat cross-legged on the bedphone, pressed to her ear, laughing at something her sister said. She looked up startled. "Dad, what's wrong?" "You didn't just..." I stopped, caught my breath. "You didn't call for help." "I've been on the phone for 20 minutes. She covered the receiver. "Are you okay?" The voice didn't fade in. It didn't echo. It just appeared, fully formed, Margot's voice, every syllable, from beneath the floor. I went back downstairs. Ren still sat frozen on the couch cartoon, playing to an empty room, her crayon box spilled across the coffee table. 3 minutes later, I checked the clock later and confirmed it 3 minutes exactly. Bryce's car pulled into the driveway. I heard his key in the front door. He came in, shaking rain from his expensive jacket, saw me standing in the hallway, saw Ren's pale face on the couch. "Everything all right?" He hung his jacket carefully on the hook. I heard Margot screaming for help from the basement. His expression shifted through concern, confusion landing on something that looked like sympathy, but felt like calculation. "Mr. Mercer?" He always called me Mr. Mercer when he wanted distance. "Margot's been upstairs all evening. I think..." He paused, letting the silence do the work. "I think you should schedule a neurology appointment. You're hearing things that don't exist." Margot appeared at the top of the stairs. Phone call finished, drawn by voices. She looked at me differently now. Not with warmth, with apprehension. "Dad heard me screaming," she said softly. "But I didn't scream." The mind can play tricks," Bryce offered, "especially with stress and grief, and I'm not imagining things." "Of course not." That smile. "But maybe it's worth checking, just to be safe, for everyone's peace of mind." Ren still hadn't moved from the couch. I walked over, sat beside my granddaughter. She looked up at me, her small body still trembling against mine, eyes wider than I'd ever seen. She didn't say a word, but I saw it clearly, something Bryce Thornton couldn't erase no matter how many times he called me. Confused my 8-year-old granddaughter had heard it too. And that was all I needed. Ren had heard it too. That single fact changed everything. Because an 8-year-old doesn't manufacture evidence. She doesn't build narratives or serve agendas. She just tells the truth. So I stopped asking questions and started watching. 30 years building a logistics empire taught me one thing. When the numbers don't add up, someone is cooking the books. And when your son-in-law changes the locks to the basement, he's hiding more than family secrets. Late September settled over North Austin with cooler nights and the pretense of normalcy. I played the role Bryce expected, the slightly confused widower, the forgetful father-in-law, the man who asked questions everyone had already answered. But in those 30 years running a company with 400 employees and 18 distribution centers across Texas, I'd learned how to observe without being seen, how to track patterns, how to build a case from fragments. Bryce went to the basement 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Between 8:30 and 9 p.m. after Ren went to bed and Margot settled in to watch her streaming shows. I started logging it, not in my phone this time, too easy to discover. I used the old method, pen and paper hidden in the locked drawer of my bedside table, where I kept Alma's jewelry. Tuesday, September the 17th, 8:42 p.m. to 9:18 p.m., 36 minutes. Thursday, September 19th, 8:35 p.m. to 9:12 p.m., 37 minutes. Saturday, September 21st, 8:47 p.m. to 9:23 p.m., 36 minutes. Every time he said he was checking on the water heater, or organizing storage, or returning business calls in private. But I'd been a CEO long enough to recognize a lie. Business calls don't happen at 9 p.m. on Saturday, and they certainly don't require you to lock the door from the inside. I knew he locked it because on Thursday the 26th, I tested it. Waited until he'd been down there 10 minutes, then walked quietly to the basement door and tried the knob. Locked from inside. I examined the lock itself the next morning when everyone was out. Crouched down, knees protesting, got close enough to read the manufacturer's stamp. Schlage encode, digital smart lock. The kind that uses keypads and app controls. The kind that costs $300 and requires professional installation. This wasn't the original hardware. I'd helped Margot and Bryce buy this house 4 years ago, walked through every room during inspection. The basement door had a standard keyed deadbolt then. Someone had replaced it, recently. I went through the household improvement records Margot kept in the kitchen filing cabinet. She'd always been meticulous about documentation, got that from her mother. Roof repairs from last spring, HVAC maintenance in July, new dishwasher installation in June. No basement lock replacement. No receipt, no contractor invoice, no mention. And when I checked the household key ring hanging by the garage door, the ring with keys to every door, every shed, every lock in the house, there was no key for the basement. ACEO knows the difference between a locked door and a vault. The basement door was a vault, and I didn't have the combination. 3 nights a week, 20 to 40 minutes, no emails, no calls, just Bryce Thornton and whatever he kept locked in that basement. The question wasn't why. The question was, when did it start? October arrived with that perfect Austin weather, cool mornings, warm afternoons, the kind of days Alma used to love. On the 3rd, a Thursday, Margot called from work saying she'd be an hour late. Traffic on Mopac. Could I keep an eye on Ren? I found my granddaughter in her room afternoon sunlight, streaming through windows covered in crayon drawings of princesses and unicorns. She sat on the floor, building a tower from colorful blocks, humming a song from one of her cartoons. "Hey, sweetheart," I settled into the small chair by her bookshelf. "What are you building?" "A castle for Princess Sparkle." She placed a purple block on top. "She needs somewhere safe." "Everyone needs somewhere safe." She looked up at me, gap-toothed smile bright. "Grandpa, did you know I'm going to be a movie star? Is that right?" "Daddy says so. He taught me how to play a movie voiceover game. I read the lines Daddy gives me and record them onto the computer. Daddy says I have a beautiful voice, like a real actress." Something cold settled into my chest. "What kind of lines, sweetheart?" "Oh, easy ones, simple stuff." She counted on her fingers. Like, "Help me," and "I'm scared," and "Please don't," and "Daddy save me." Sometimes I say "stop," or "no," or "I want to go home." Daddy says I'm getting really good at sounding real. The tower of blocks blurred in my vision. "How long have you been playing this game?" "Weeks and weeks, ever since summer ended. Daddy has me do it in his office while he works on his computer. He says we're making a movie together, but it's a surprise, so I can't tell Mommy yet. She thinks she's playing actress, recording voice lines for a movie, a secret project with her father. But I'd spent enough time in corporate espionage litigation to recognize data collection when I saw it. Voice samples, emotional inflections. A child's voice saying distress phrases, fear, phrases, help phrases. AI voice synthesis requires training data, hours of recorded speech across different emotional states. The more samples, the more convincing the replication. This isn't strategy anymore. This is a grandfather watching innocence weaponized. Bryce hadn't just planned this. He'd been building it for months, used his own daughter as an unwitting tool, collected her voice, her cadence, her pronunciation of words like help and scared and daddy. All the phrases you'd need to synthesize a child in distress. And she was smiling, still innocent, still thinking she was special because Daddy said she had a beautiful voice. Ren looked at me with those clear 8-year-old eyes, still holding her purple block, still smiling. "Do you want to hear me record, Grandpa?" I managed to keep my voice steady. "You don't need to, sweetheart. You've done a good job." Then I turned my face away, so she wouldn't see my eyes. I kept my face turned until Ren went back to her blocks, humming that cartoon song, building her castle for Princess Sparkle, who needed somewhere safe. When I was certain my expression wouldn't betray the fury burning through my chest, I stood and told her I needed to help Grandma Margot with dinner. She smiled, still innocent, still thinking Daddy loved her. Sometimes the universe hands you exactly what you need, not because you're lucky, but because you're paying attention when everyone else thinks you're too old to notice anything at all. October 10th arrived cool and clear. Thursday evening, I sat in the living room reading the news on my tablet while Bryce worked in his home office door, closed taking calls in that smooth voice he used for clients. Around 7:30, he emerged, phone in one hand, keys in the other. "Dad, I left my briefcase in the Range Rover. Could you grab it for me, backseat passenger side?" He tossed me the keys without waiting for an answer, already turning back to his call. I walked through the kitchen into the garage. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in cold white. The smell of gasoline and leather and that peculiar scent of expensive cars hit me as I pressed the unlock button. The Range Rover's lights flashed. I opened the back passenger door, leaned in to grab the leather briefcase sitting on the seat. That's when I saw it. A black prepaid phone, the cheap kind you buy at convenience stores, sliding out from under the driver's seat. Must have been wedged there dislodged when I opened the back door and shifted the car's weight. The screen lit up. New message notification. I glanced toward the door to the kitchen. Closed. Bryce still on his call inside. I picked up the phone. The message was right there on the lock screen. From LS, evaluation scheduled November 14th. Finch confirmed. Petition ready. LS. My hands didn't shake. 30 years of high-stakes negotiations taught me how to keep my body still when my mind was racing. I pulled out my own phone, opened the camera, took a photo of the screen, making sure the timestamp and contact name were visible. Then, I carefully placed the burner phone back under the driver's seat exactly where it had fallen, grabbed the briefcase, walked back inside, handed it to Bryce, who nodded his thanks without looking up from his call. In my room with the door locked, I examined the photo. LS unknown co-conspirator. Someone close enough to coordinate with Bryce, professional enough to use initials instead of names. Finch, a doctor, had to be. Evaluations meant medical assessments. November 14th. Evaluation scheduled. Not a real estate assessment, not a property evaluation. This was about me. Petition ready, legal filing, prepared in advance, waiting. I opened the calendar on my phone. Today was October 10th. 35 days. 35 days until whatever Bryce had planned would happen. Until the evaluation, until the petition. 35 days? If someone ever tells you that's not enough time to save your life, they've never spent 30 years outmaneuvering competitors who thought a regional logistics CEO from Texas couldn't see 3 moves ahead. I had the timeline now. November 14th was the day I needed to be ready. But ready for what? October 17th, Friday morning, breakfast. Margot sat at the kitchen table in her work clothes skirt and blouse hair, pulled back scrolling through emails on her phone while she ate yogurt and granola. Ren was still asleep upstairs. Early Texas sunlight slanted through the windows, and the coffee maker hissed and gurgled, filling the kitchen with that rich morning smell. Bryce came down the stairs already dressed in one of his perfectly tailored suits. He poured coffee, added exactly 1 sugar, stirred it with that precise motion he always used. Then he turned to Margot, concern etched across his face like he'd been rehearsing it. "Honey, I need to tell you something. About your dad." Margot looked up. "What's wrong?" "Last night around 2 a.m. I woke up and heard someone at the front door." He paused, letting it sink in. "It was your father, in his pajamas, trying to go outside. He was confused, disoriented. Didn't seem to know where he was going. I had to lead him back to his room." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "That didn't happen." Bryce looked at me with perfect practiced sympathy. "Dad, you might not remember. I slept through the night, all night, never left my room." Margot's eyes moved between us. I saw the calculation happening, the same calculation that had been happening for weeks now. Her father hearing voices that don't exist. Her father asking questions he supposedly already asked. Her father now wandering at night. Or her husband lying, systematically, elaborately, for no reason she could understand. There are moments when a father watches his daughter choose between believing him or believing the man who shares her bed. This was that moment, and I was losing. "Dad," her voice was gentle, too gentle, the voice you use with someone fragile. "Have you been feeling okay? Sleeping well?" "I'm fine." Bryce sat down, wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. "I've been doing some research. I've looked into some high-end senior care facilities, very luxurious, not your typical nursing home. Places with full medical staff, activities, dignity, just in case we need to consider options." The kitchen went quiet except for the coffee maker's final hiss. Margot didn't defend me, didn't protest, didn't say "Dad's fine" or "That's not necessary" or "You're overreacting." She just sat there, yogurt spoon frozen halfway to her mouth, looking at me with worry creasing her forehead. For the first time in 34 years, my daughter looked at me like I might be exactly what Bryce was telling her I was. "I don't need a facility," I said quietly. "I need my daughter to trust me." Margot set down her spoon. "I do trust you, Dad, but if you're having episodes, I'm not having episodes." She ate her breakfast in silence after that, finished her yogurt, rinsed the bowl, grabbed her bag, kissed Bryce goodbye, squeezed my shoulder on her way out. But she didn't say she believed me. I sat at that breakfast table after she left coffee cold in my cup, and I understood. Bryce Thornton wasn't just attacking me. He was systematically turning Margot into the person building the wall to trap her own father. I watched Margot leave for work that morning without defending me, watched Bryce pour his second cup of coffee with that satisfied smile, and I understood that waiting for my daughter to believe me wasn't a strategy. It was surrender, so I stopped waiting. There comes a moment when you realize you can't fight alone, not because you're weak, but because the enemy has built a machine and you need someone who knows how to dismantle machines built on lies. October 24th, late night. The house settled into its usual rhythms. Wren asleep by 8:30. Margot in bed by 10, exhausted from another long day at the paralegal firm. Bryce in his office until 11, then upstairs to join his wife. I waited in my room with the door locked and the lights off, except for the small desk lamp. Sat on the edge of my bed with my personal phone in my hand, not the one I carried openly through the house, the one Bryce had probably already figured out how to monitor. This was the old smartphone Alma had given me, the one I kept charged in my dresser drawer, the one with a different number that almost nobody knew. Almost nobody. I pulled up the contacts list, scrolled past Margot's work number, past Alma's sister in Houston, past the handful of business associates from my logistics days who'd retired to golf courses in Arizona and Florida. Found the entry I'd saved 36 years ago, back when we both had more hair and fewer reasons to understand how cruel people could be. He'd called me Ed since the first week of freshman year, said Clarence sounded like a judge, and I didn't look like one. Vernon Harding, Ray to his friends, federal prosecutor for the Western District of Texas, to everyone else 35 years. On the job before he retired 2 years ago, and the FBI's white-collar crime division still called him as a consultant when they needed someone who'd seen everything. We'd met freshman year at UT Austin, 2 kids from small Texas towns who didn't quite fit the fraternity mold. He went to law school while I built my logistics company. He prosecuted white-collar criminals while I moved freight across the state. We stood up at each other's weddings. Our wives became friends. We had dinner twice a year and never let more than a month go by without a phone call. Until Alma died and I couldn't talk to anyone for a while, and Ray understood and gave me space. 63 years old now, 35 years as a prosecutor, over 200 successful felony indictments, organized crime, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Ray Harding knew how to take apart criminal operations the way a mechanic knows engines, every piece, every connection, every weakness. Bryce Thornton had never met someone like Ray, and Ray never lost. I pressed the call button. 2 rings, then his voice alert despite the late hour. No grogginess, no confusion, just immediate presence. Ed. Only 3 people had ever called me Ed. Alma, Ray, and Alma's father before he passed. "Ray," I kept my voice low. "I need to see you, not over the phone, and don't call this number back." Silence. 3 seconds of it, long enough that I could hear him thinking, processing, shifting gears. If you ever need to know whether someone is truly your friend, call them at midnight with no explanation and listen to how fast they say yes. Vernon said yes in 3 seconds. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Not the warm tone of a college friend asking about my health. The clipped, precise cadence of a federal prosecutor who'd just been handed a case. Wednesday, Joe's Coffee on South Congress, 7 a.m. Sit at the outside table. He hung up. No questions, no, "What's wrong?" No, "Can you give me a hint?" Just operational instructions delivered with the efficiency of someone who understood exactly what "not over the phone" meant. Ray knew, maybe not the details, not the specifics of basement locks and fabricated wandering stories and children's voices synthesized from training data, but he knew the shape of it. Someone was listening, someone was watching, someone had built a trap. And Ray Harding had spent 35 years walking into traps and walking back out with indictments. I set the phone down on the nightstand and lay back on the bed, still fully dressed. Outside, Austin hummed with its late-night traffic, distant sirens, the occasional dog barking. The house creaked and settled around me. Somewhere down the hall, Bryce slept beside my daughter, probably dreaming about November 14th, and whatever he had planned for that evaluation with Dr. Finch. But for the first time since I'd heard that woman crying in the basement back in August, for the first time since I'd watched Wren tremble when she heard her mother's voice screaming for help, for the first time since I'd discovered my granddaughter had been turned into a voice training tool, I felt something that wasn't fear. Ray would know what to do. He'd built cases against people who thought they were untouchable, mobsters with lawyers, corporate executives with accountants, fraudsters with shell companies and offshore accounts. Bryce Thornton thought he was clever, thought he'd covered every angle, thought an old widower would be too confused, too isolated, too weak to fight back. Bryce had never been investigated by Vernon Harding. For the first time since August, I closed my eyes without counting the days until November 14th. Because I wasn't counting alone anymore. Wednesday morning, Joe's coffee, 7 a.m., outside table. 21 days until whatever Bryce had planned. But I had Ray. I turned off the desk lamp and lay in the darkness, phone still warm in my hand, and let myself sleep. Real sleep. Not the fitful, half-conscious state I'd been existing in for weeks. Not the hyper-vigilant monitoring of every sound in the house. Sleep. Because Vernon Harding, 63 years old and sharp as ever, after 35 years as a federal prosecutor for the Western District of Texas, had just heard his friend say, "I need help," and responded the way Ray always responded, with precision, with professionalism, with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never lost a case and wasn't about to start now. Bryce Thornton thought he was building a perfect trap. He didn't know I'd just called in someone who dismantled perfect traps for a living. And Ray never loses. Saturday morning, I woke up at 5:30 and realized I'd slept through the entire night without waking once. The outside table at Joe's Coffee on South Congress at 7 in the morning looked like two old friends catching up over coffee, which was exactly the point when you're about to tell a federal prosecutor that your son-in-law is running a high-tech conspiracy to steal $6.8 million. I got there first. October 26th, Saturday, cool early morning. Austin air carrying the smell of fresh brewed espresso and breakfast tacos from the food truck parked across the street. South Congress was just starting to wake up. Joggers, dog walkers, the early shift at the vintage shops unlocking doors. Vernon arrived at exactly 7 a.m., wearing jeans and a faded UT Longhorns t-shirt, looking nothing like a federal prosecutor, and everything like a man meeting an old college friend for weekend coffee. He sat down across from me, ordered a black coffee from the server, and waited until she walked away before speaking. "Tell me everything," and he said. "Don't leave anything out." So I did. The woman crying in the basement in August. The way it stopped the instant my hand touched the doorknob. Bryce's systematic gaslighting, always with witnesses, never alone. The comments about my forgetfulness. The fabricated wandering story. Wren's voiceover game. Those simple phrases recorded over and over. "Help me. I'm scared. Please don't. Daddy, save me." Margot's voice screaming from the basement while she was upstairs on the phone, Wren hearing it too, trembling in my arms. The burner phone, the text message, LS, Finch. Evaluation scheduled November 14th, petition ready. The new digital lock on the basement. Bryce's 3 nights a week visits down there, 20 to 40 minutes each time. I showed him the screenshot I'd taken. Showed him my hidden log of every gaslighting incident with witnesses present. Vernon didn't interrupt once, just drank his coffee occasionally, glancing at the street, listening with that prosecutor's focus that makes every word feel like evidence being cataloged. When I finished, he set his cup down and looked at me directly. Conservatorship fraud with elements of wire fraud, interstate phone or email communications make this federal jurisdiction. Title 18, United States Code. Section 1343. But I need hard evidence, not testimony. Right now, this is your word against his, and he's built a narrative with witnesses. I know. You need to record him. Get him talking about what he's planning. Vernon reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a device no bigger than his thumb. Black plastic simple on, off button. Forensic recorder. Admissible in court if one of the parties to the conversation consents to being recorded, and you're the consenting party. Texas is a one-party consent state. He slid it across the table. I picked it up. Surprisingly light. How much time do you have? I showed him the screenshot again. The date, November 14th. Today is October 26th, 21 days left. Vernon nodded slowly. Enough. But it has to start today. Texas is a one-party consent state. Remember that. It means when someone records you without your knowledge and you're the one who knows every word they say, becomes evidence they handed you themselves. We finished our coffee like two old friends catching up, talked about the Longhorns football season, complained about Austin traffic, laughed about the time we tried to build our own beer pong table freshman year and nearly set the apartment on fire. Anyone watching would have seen exactly what we wanted them to see. Two 60-something men drinking coffee and remembering better days. Vernon left first. I stayed another 10 minutes, ordered a breakfast taco, ate it slowly while reading the news on my phone. Then I went home. October 31st, Thursday afternoon. Bryce at work. Margot had taken Ren to a school Halloween party. They'd be gone until dinner. I had the house to myself. Vernon had given me a list during that coffee meeting. 7 specific devices to check. Smart home technology installed in the house over the past year. I started with the living room smoke detector. Stood on a chair, pulled it down from the ceiling. Mount examined it with the small LED flashlight and magnifying glass I'd bought at the hardware store on the way home. There, hidden in the ventilation slots. A lens no bigger than a pencil eraser. 2 millimeters. The lens is 2 millimeters. Smaller than a pencil eraser. Hidden in a smoke detector vent, you walk past 20 times a day without thinking twice. I checked the hallway thermostat next. Unscrewed the faceplate. Behind it, integrated into the circuit board, a secondary Wi-Fi chip that wasn't in the manufacturer's original specifications. Camera. Motion detector in the upstairs hallway. Camera. Kitchen smoke detector. Camera. Stairway motion-activated nightlight. Camera. Guest bathroom exhaust fan. Camera. My bedroom's carbon monoxide detector. Camera. 7 devices, all replaced with versions that looked identical to the originals, but contained hidden surveillance equipment. All connecting to a single IP address that Vernon had helped me trace using network monitoring software on my old laptop. Bryce Thornton had been watching me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, since I moved into this house in July. Every movement, every expression, every moment I thought I was alone. I stood in the living room, holding the smoke detector in my hands, and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not fear, not anymore. Clarity. Vernon's voice in my head. Don't dismantle anything. Don't change the angles. If the signal drops suddenly, he'll know you've discovered the system. Let him keep watching. Use it. I carefully remounted the smoke detector exactly where it had been. Made sure the lens had the same 180-degree view of the living room it had before. Then I sat down on the sofa, right in the center of the camera's field of view, looked directly at the smoke detector, and smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a confused old man's uncertain expression. A smile that said, I know exactly what you're doing, and you have no idea what's coming. I sat there for a full minute letting Bryce see whatever he was seeing on his monitoring system. Letting him think I was just a confused widower, sitting on the couch maybe wondering what to make for dinner. If you're watching, Bryce, and I know you are good, keep watching. The show is about to get better. The show got better fast. Because once you know someone is watching, you can control exactly what they see and what they don't. When you wake up every morning feeling like you're swimming through fog and everyone around you says, it's just old age, there comes a moment when you have to ask yourself, what if someone is making sure you feel exactly this way? That moment came November 1st. I'd been drinking chamomile tea every night for 20 years. Started as Alma's habit, she swore it helped her sleep, and became mine after she passed. Routine, comfort. The familiar smell, the warmth of the cup in my hands before bed. Lately, I'd been sleeping deeply, too deeply, waking up foggy, struggling to concentrate in the mornings. Everyone said it was normal at 61. Grief, stress, age. But that evening, when I came downstairs around 9 for my usual cup, Bryce was in the kitchen. Made your tea for you, Dad. He gestured to the mug sitting on the counter, steam rising from it. Saw you coming down. Thought I'd save you the trouble. First time that had ever happened. I thanked him, picked up the mug, carried it upstairs to my room, set it on the nightstand without drinking a single sip. In the morning, while Bryce was in the shower and Margot was getting Ren ready for school, I poured the cold tea into a small glass jar I'd taken from the recycling bin, sealed it, hid it in my jacket pocket, At 10 a.m., I drove to my old clinic on the east side, the one I'd used for years before Margot convinced me to switch to the fancy concierge practice near their house. Jake Brennan was still there, pharmacist. We'd known each other 15 years. He'd filled Alma's prescriptions when the cancer got bad. Never asked questions he knew I couldn't answer. I handed him the jar. "Can you tell me what's in this quietly?" Jake looked at me over his reading glasses, took the jar. "Give me 20 minutes. I sat in the waiting room, reading outdated magazines about home gardening and healthy recipes. 23 minutes later, Jake called me back to his office, closed the door. "Low-dose benzodiazepine," he said. "Not enough to show up in routine blood work, but regular use over weeks. Drowsiness, cognitive fog, slowed reactions, classic presentation." I sat very still. How long would someone need to take this to show symptoms? 2, maybe 3 weeks of nightly use. Benzodiazepine. If you don't know the name, you know the effect. Valium, Xanax. The pills that make the world soft and your thoughts slow. Low-dose regular use, hidden in something you drink every single night because you trust the person who lives in your house. For weeks I'd been drinking it voluntarily, calling the morning fogginess old age, the concentration problems stress, the deep sleep exhaustion. Bryce Thornton had been poisoning me, and I'd been helping him do it. I drove home in silence, put the jar in my locked dresser drawer next to Alma's jewelry and the hidden log of gaslighting incidents. Then I called Dr. Celeste Hoffman. November 4th, Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Dr. Hoffman's private clinic sat in a quiet medical building, 20 minutes from the house. Professional, discreet. She'd monitored my health for 15 years. Physical exams, blood work, the checkups Alma used to force me to schedule. 58 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, steady hands. The kind of calm professionalism that comes from 3 decades of family medicine. She'd known me since before Alma died. Knew my baseline. I sat in her office and explained the situation in 5 sentences. Conservatorship fraud. Fake psychiatric evaluation coming. Need to establish cognitive baseline with trusted physician. Today. Celeste didn't ask follow-up questions. Didn't express shock or disbelief. Just nodded once and said, "Let's get to work." She administered 2 comprehensive cognitive assessments. MMSE, First Mini Mental State Examination. Orientation questions, memory tests, language tasks, attention and calculation. What year is it? What season? What day of the week? Where are we right now? City-state building. Repeat these 3 words. Apple table, penny. Now count backward from 100 by 7s. 93, 86, 79. Remember those 3 words I asked you to repeat. Tell them to me now. Apple, table, penny. Then MOCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment, more detailed. Executive function, visuospatial abilities, abstract thinking. Draw a clock showing 10 minutes past 11. Connect these numbers and letters in alternating order. Name as many words as you can that start with the letter F in 1 minute. I answered every question, completed every task, focused with the same clarity I'd used running board meetings and negotiating distribution contracts. Celeste scored both tests in silence, then looked up at me. MMSE and MOCA, 30 out of 30 on both. "Clarence, you're completely lucid. No signs of cognitive decline whatsoever. 30 out of 30. Perfect score. Every question answered correctly." And in that moment, sitting in Celeste's clinic with the morning sun streaming through the blinds, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, the absolute certainty that I was not losing my mind. "I need this documented," I said. Signed, notarized, medical record with timestamp. Already ahead of you. Celeste printed the assessment results on clinic letterhead, signed and dated them, called in her office notary. While we waited, she explained the legal framework. Under Texas Estates Code, Section 1101.103, any conservatorship petition requires a medical evaluation filed with the court. The court reviews the evaluation. They don't just accept it on faith. If someone files a petition with a different doctor's assessment, claiming cognitive decline, and you have a contemporaneous evaluation from your longtime physician showing perfect cognitive function, the court has to reconcile that discrepancy. Meaning you've created reasonable doubt. The burden shifts. They have to prove their evaluation is more credible than mine. The notary arrived, stamped the assessment, signed, dated, official. Celeste handed me the document in a sealed envelope. "You're healthier than most of my 40-year-old patients, Ed." I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket, right next to the forensic recorder Vernon had given me. "Good," I said, "because someone is about to try and prove otherwise." I shook her hand and walked out into the November morning. 13 days until the 14th. But now I had proof, medical proof, legal proof. Notarized proof that when Bryce's fake psychiatrist filed his fake evaluation, claiming I was incompetent, there would be another doctor's voice in that courtroom. And Celeste Hoffman had known me for 15 years. How long had Dr. Finch known me? I drove home smiling. That someone came to dinner the very next night. The man Bryce brought home for dinner Tuesday evening had the kind of smile that stops at the lips and never touches the eyes. And I recognized every question he asked as a test I'd been preparing to take my entire professional life. "Dad, this is Dr. Dexter Garrett, old friend from my real estate networking group. Dex. This is my father-in-law, Clarence." Dr. Garrett was 52, professionally dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, carrying a leather briefcase he set by the door. His handshake was firm, but his hands were cold, dry. The kind of hands that spent more time writing assessments than touching patients. "Pleasure to meet you, Clarence." That smile, pleasant, practiced, empty. We sat down to dinner. Margot had made pot roast one of Alma's old recipes. Wren was upstairs finishing homework. Just the four of us around the table under warm yellow light. Dr. Garrett made small talk, asked about my career in logistics, mentioned he was a general practitioner with a private practice in West Austin, said he'd known Bryce for years through various business connections. All perfectly normal. Then the questions started. "So, Clarence, what day of the week is it today? I always lose track myself." "Tuesday, November 5th. "Ah, right. And who's the current president? I try not to follow politics too closely these days." I looked at him across the pot roast and mashed potatoes and saw exactly what he was doing. Mini mental state examination. MMSE. The same cognitive screening Celeste had administered 2 days ago. Orientation questions. Memory assessment. Disguised as casual dinner conversation. "The president is still who it was yesterday," I said calmly. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just making conversation." He smiled, took a bite of pot roast. "This is delicious, Margot." Throughout dinner, he worked through the checklist. Do I often misplace things? Can I remember what I had for breakfast? Do I ever forget appointments? I answered every question correctly, stayed calm, maintained eye contact. But I also made a calculated decision. When Margot mentioned a movie she'd seen recently, I joined the conversation, talked about the plot, the director, then pretended to struggle with the lead actor's name. "You know the guy who was in that other film? What's his name? I can see his face, but the name just..." I let it trail off, shook my head. "It'll come to me." Garrett's eyes sharpened slightly. I saw him mentally filing that detail away. Shows signs of difficulty recalling names. Not enough to be alarming, just enough to be noted. Playing chess with someone who thinks you don't know the rules is the easiest game in the world. You let them think they're winning, you let them take a pawn, and you never let them see your queen. After dinner, Garrett shook my hand again at the door. "Very nice to meet you, Mr. Mercer." "Thank you, Doctor. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon." His smile flickered, just for a second. Then he was gone. Bryce walked him to his car. I watched through the window as they stood in the driveway talking for 5 minutes. Garrett pulled out a small notebook, wrote something, showed it to Bryce. They both nodded. I went upstairs to my room, locked the door, and added a new entry to my hidden log. November 5th, Tuesday evening. Dr. Dexter Garrett, MMSE screening disguised as dinner, performed as expected. Fed him one minor flaw. Control maintained. 12 days until the 14th. November 6th, Wednesday, 1 a.m. Bryce had gone out again. Second time this week. Said he had late meetings with a client considering a commercial property downtown. I waited until I heard Margot's breathing settle into the deep rhythm of sleep, until the house went completely quiet. Then I took Vernon's digital code reader from my locked drawer and went downstairs. The basement doors schlaged, and code lock opened in 40 seconds, just like Vernon said it would. 4 beeps, green light, click. I descended into darkness, small LED flashlight in hand. The basement looked exactly like you'd expect. Storage shelves along one wall, washer and dryer, boxes labeled Christmas decorations and old tax records and kitchen items. Nothing unusual, except Behind the last shelving unit against the far wall, there was a section of wood paneling, same style as the rest of the basement, same color. But the finish was newer, cleaner, less dust in the grain. I knocked on it, hollow sound echoed back. I spent 10 minutes running my hands along the edges, looking for seams mechanisms, any way to open it. Finally found it a screw head, set into the paneling that looked decorative but turned 90 degrees when twisted. Something clicked inside the wall. I pulled, and the wood panel swung open on hidden hinges. Behind it, a steel door. Steel, not wood, not drywall. Steel, an inch thick, with a latch mechanism designed to hide in plain sight. This wasn't built in a weekend. The steel door wasn't locked, just latched from this side. I unlatched it. The door swung open slowly, heavy on industrial hinges that didn't make a sound. Well-oiled, maintained. I shined my flashlight through the opening. A room. Maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. Finished walls, carpet on the floor, electrical outlets, overhead lighting with a pull chain. I didn't step inside. Not yet. Vernon's voice in my head, "Don't disturb anything until you've documented exactly how you found it." I pulled out my phone and took photos. Panoramic shots from the doorway. The steel door, the false paneling, the room beyond with my flashlight beam showing furniture equipment, something on a desk. 23 photos total. Then I closed the steel door, latched it, swung the wood panel back into place, turned the disguise screw 90 degrees, locked the basement door behind me, went back to my room, uploaded all 23 photos to Vernon's encrypted server. My hands didn't shake. Alma used to say something when I came home from particularly difficult negotiations, when I'd sit at the kitchen table and tell her about the competitor who tried to undercut our contract, or the distributor who'd lied about inventory, or the client who'd threatened litigation. She'd pour me coffee and sit down across from me and say, "I fear most those who don't shake when they need to shake." I sat in my locked bedroom phone, showing upload complete, and thought, Alma, if you could see this, you would understand why. She would have understood, because Alma always knew when I was walking into something dangerous, and she'd learned to trust that I knew what I was doing. 24 hours later, I walked through that steel door again. 23 minutes. That's how long it took Vernon's USB drive to copy everything Bryce Thornton had built in the dark room beneath my feet. And every second I stood there in the cold blue glow of computer screens, I was counting my own heartbeat and listening for footsteps that would mean I'd run out of time. November 7th, 1 a.m., Thursday morning. I entered the secret room wearing latex gloves Vernon had provided, pulled the chain on the overhead light. The fluorescent bulb flickered once, then bathed everything in harsh white. A desk against the far wall. 2 dedicated laptops, both powered on screens glowing. Between them, an audio mixer with sliders and knobs. Speaker system with wires running up into the ceiling, into the ventilation shafts that carried air throughout the entire house. I sat down in the desk chair. It was adjusted for someone taller, Bryce's height. The left laptop screen showed commercial AI voice cloning software, professional grade, the kind that costs thousands in licensing fees. Folders organized by name. Margot_dataset 847 audio files. Ren_dataset 312 files. I clicked on one file in Margot's folder. Her voice filled the small room through the speakers, crystal clear. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well? Does it beam skiff bob a base?" A recording from breakfast. Weeks ago, maybe months. I closed the file and plugged Vernon's USB drive into the port, copying 23 minutes remaining. The walls were covered with printouts, screenshots from the hidden cameras, me sleeping in my bed, me reading in the living room, me on my phone in the kitchen. Photos of Ren playing in the backyard, Margot coming home from work, briefcase in hand, tired smile. Someone had sat in this dark room beneath my feet watching, listening, cataloging every word, every movement, every breath, turning them into something that could scream for help from a locked basement while the real person slept upstairs. I stood completely still while the progress bar crept forward, counted every second, listened to the hum of laptop fans and the distant sound of the house settling. 23 minutes, and I didn't move. November 8th, 1 a.m., Friday morning, 3rd consecutive night. The desk had a locked drawer, mechanical lock, old-fashioned. Vernon had taught me how to pick these in his office 2 weeks ago. Tension, wrench and pick, feel for the pins. 2 minutes. Click. Inside a thick manila folder, bank statements, loan agreements, documentation printed on official letterhead from 2 different Austin banks. Bryce Thornton owed $1.13 million. 3 personal loans across 2 banks. 1 mortgage on a failed commercial real estate project in Dallas that had gone under 18 months ago. And on 2 of those loans in the cosigner field, a signature Margot Mercer Thornton. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I'd taken weeks ago, the house purchase contract from when Margot and Bryce bought this place. Margot's real signature, clear and documented. I compared them side by side. The stroke was different. The formation of the letter M, completely wrong. The way the A connected to the R, not even close. Bryce had forged his wife's signature. Texas is a community property state. Margot could be held liable for debt incurred during marriage. But if the signature was forged, that was bank fraud. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1344, up to 30 years federal prison, and identity theft, 18 U.S. C-1028. Margot didn't know. She had no idea her signature had been forged, that she was listed as co-signer on over $1 million in debt she never agreed to. Bryce didn't just betray me. He weaponized my daughter without her ever knowing she was holding the gun. I photographed every page, every statement, every forged signature. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Locked the drawer, left the room, sealed the steel door, closed the false panel. Went upstairs and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling until dawn. November 9th, 11 p.m., Saturday night. My phone buzzed. Encrypted signal call. Vernon. I locked my bedroom door and answered. Lamar Sutton, Vernon said, without preamble. 3 conservatorship cases over the past 5 years. Travis County and Williamson County. All 3 show the exact same pattern. Elderly individual declared incapacitated within 6 months following major family change. And Ed, in 2 of those cases, the elderly individual died within 18 months of entering the care facility. I sat very still. Most recent case was Harold Weston, 74 years old, Austin, entire estate valued at $2.3 million, transferred to an heir after Harold was declared incompetent. And guess who served as the real estate broker when Harold's house sold 6 months later? Bryce Thornton pocketed $94,000 in commission. Harold Weston, 74 years old, died alone in a nursing home with no one standing at his casket crying. I didn't know him, but when Vernon described the case, I understood that was my future if I failed. This connects Bryce to Lamar before Bryce even met Margot, I said. Correct. The FBI has been investigating Lamar for 8 months. White-collar fraud division. But they need insider evidence. Something that ties the conspiracy together from the inside. Documentation that shows intent planning coordination. You're saying I'm the only one who can get it. You're the only one inside the operation who knows what you're looking for. Outside my window, Austin glowed against the November night. Somewhere out there, Harold Weston's family was living with the aftermath of whatever Bryce and Lamar had done. 2 other families grieving elderly relatives who died in facilities after being declared incompetent. 4 victims, 3 dead or destroyed. I was number 4. How much time do you have? Vernon asked. I looked at the screenshot of the burner phone text still saved on my device. The date that had been circled in red since I first saw it. November 14th, 5 days left. Vernon's voice dropped a note lower. The prosecutor voice. The voice that had closed 200 federal cases. Eddie, I need you to do something before that day, and you only get 1 chance. Vernon didn't tell me what that 1 chance was. Not on the phone. He said we'd meet again in person before the 14th. Said I'd know what to do when the moment came. I hung up and sat in the dark, knowing the countdown had shifted from abstract threat to tactical operation. 4 days left. There's a particular kind of cruelty in letting your enemies see exactly how trapped they are, not to warn them, but to watch them realize there's nowhere left to run. November 10th, Sunday morning, early breakfast. Margot had already left for work, briefcase in hand, kissing Wren goodbye before heading downtown to the paralegal firm. Wren was upstairs getting ready for school, just me and Bryce at the kitchen table, coffee brewing, toast in the toaster, morning Texas light slanting through the windows. Bryce stood up to get bread from the counter. As he did, he set his phone down on the table, face up, screen glowing. I could see it clearly from where I sat. Email notification from Travis County Probate Court. R.E. Conservatorship petition. Filed. Clarence Mercer. Preliminary hearing. Scheduled. November 21st, 2024, 9 a.m., Judge Marion Blackwell presiding. November 21st, 7 days after Ren's birthday. Bryce came back with the bread, saw me looking at his phone, and his expression shifted into something that looked like concern, but felt like satisfaction. "Oh, you saw that." He sat down slowly. "Dad, I didn't want you to find out this way." I set my coffee cup down carefully, didn't say anything. "I just want the best for you." Bryce continued, voice, soft eyes, watching my reaction like a scientist observing an experiment. "This is the best choice for the whole family. You'll be somewhere safe, somewhere with professional care. Margot won't have to worry. Ren won't have to see you decline." He was waiting for me to break, to argue, to panic. I nodded slightly. "I understand." Stood up, took my coffee cup to the sink, rinsed it, set it in the dishwasher, walked upstairs to my room without another word. Behind me, I heard Bryce pick up his phone, heard him typing, probably texting someone, probably Lamar or Dr. Garrett. Target saw the timeline. No reaction, proceeding as planned. But here's what Bryce didn't understand. He'd just given me the exact deadline. He thought it was pressure. I thought it was his final mistake. November 21st, 7 days after Ren's birthday. If you've ever seen someone show you the date of your execution and smile while doing it, you understand they're not warning you. They're watching to see if you break. I didn't break. That evening dinner around the family table. Margot had made spaghetti and meatballs. Ren was telling a story about something that happened at school. The smell of garlic bread filled the kitchen, and for a moment, it almost felt normal. Then Bryce cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said, unusually cheerful. "Ren's 8th birthday is coming up in 4 days. I want to do something special." Ren's eyes lit up. "Like what?" "Like renting the private hall at Uchi Restaurant. You know that nice place on South Lamar? The one with the really good food." Margot looked surprised. "Bryce, that's expensive." "She's worth it." He reached over and ruffled Ren's hair. "I'm talking about the full treatment. 50 guests. Extended family, your colleagues from work, some of my former business partners, Ren's classmates, professional photographer, custom-ordered cake, and a big LED screen so we can display family photos during the party." Ren literally jumped up and down in her chair. 50 people, like a real party. Like a real party. Margot was smiling, now touched by what looked like generous fatherly love. "That's really sweet, honey. Ren, what do you think?" "Yes, can Emma come and Sophia, and everyone from my class?" I sat quietly, fork in hand, spaghetti cooling on my plate. 50 witnesses. 1 LED screen. Uchi Restaurant, upscale, respectable, the kind of place where wealthy Austin families celebrate milestones. Bryce wasn't planning a birthday party, he was constructing a stage. He would announce Dr. Garrett's psychiatric evaluation in front of 50 people simultaneously. Extended family who'd known me for years. Margot's professional colleagues, his business contacts, Ren's teachers and classmates' parents. Maximum social pressure, total public commitment. By the time anyone questioned it, the narrative would be set in stone in front of 50 witnesses. No one argues with a man who's just publicly declared his father-in-law incompetent at a child's birthday party, not without looking cruel. This wasn't a birthday. This was execution by social consensus. Ren's innocent joy jumping up and down, talking about cake and friends and presents cut through everything else like a knife. Because she had no idea her 8th birthday was the day her grandfather was supposed to disappear. "War, Grandpa," she turned to me, eyes shining. "You're coming right. You have to come." I looked at my granddaughter, 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, pink shirt with a unicorn on it, completely unaware that her father was planning to use her birthday as cover for destroying someone she loved. Bryce was watching me across the table, waiting to see if I'd refuse, if I'd make a scene, if I'd give him ammunition to use in front of Margot. "Are you coming to my birthday, Grandpa?" I set down my fork, reached across the table, and took her small hand in mine. "I'll be there," I said clearly, "and I promise this will be a birthday Ren never forgets." Margot smiled, thinking I was being a sweet grandfather. Ren squeezed my hand, delighted. Bryce's expression flickered just for a second, with something that might have been uncertainty. Because he'd built his perfect trap. 50 witnesses, public announcement, social pressure that would make denial impossible. What he didn't know, I'd already decided exactly what would be displayed on that LED screen. And it wasn't family photos. What would appear on that screen wasn't family photos. It was evidence, justice, the truth Bryce thought he'd buried in a locked room beneath everyone's feet. But first I had to understand exactly what and who I was fighting for. The photograph showed Harold Weston's funeral, a 74-year-old man in an expensive casket with exactly 0 people standing there crying over it. And I understood in that moment that saving myself wasn't enough anymore. November 11th, Monday afternoon, 3 days before Wren's birthday. Vernon chose a neutral location. Not Joe's coffee, not his office. A small intermediary law firm downtown that handled document transfers and discreet meetings. Professional, anonymous. The kind of place where conversations stayed private. He was waiting in a conference room when I arrived. Closed door, no windows looking out to the hallway. On the table, a manila folder. Harold Weston, Vernon said, without preamble. He opened the folder and pulled out an 8x10 photograph. 74, died alone in nursing home 18 months after conservatorship was established. Look at this photo, Eddie. The photograph showed a funeral, expensive casket, flowers arranged professionally, and exactly 0 people standing there crying. His daughter lives in California, Vernon continued. By the time she flew in for the funeral, the estate was already transferred. $2.3 million, gone. She hired a lawyer, but couldn't prove anything. No evidence of fraud, just her father's signature on documents and a psychiatric evaluation declaring him incompetent. He pulled out more documents, house sale records, real estate broker Bryce Thornton, commission $94,000, legal fees paid to Lamar Sutton $180,000. House sold 3 weeks after Harold entered the nursing home, Vernon said. Bryce handled the sale personally, pocketed nearly $100,000 in commission. Then Harold died alone 16 months later, and his daughter got nothing. I stared at the funeral photo. Empty chairs, no mourners. A man who'd lived 74 years reduced to a transaction. That was my future, I said quietly, if I failed tomorrow. Not just yours. Vernon placed a USB drive on the table. Small, black, innocent looking. This is what the FBI needs from that secret room. Specific data, file structures, communication logs. If you retrieve it, if you can get this information and get it to me before the 14th, the Weston case gets reopened. His daughter can sue to reclaim the assets, and we prevent the next victim. When you look at a photograph of a man's funeral and realize no one loved him enough to stand there crying, or everyone who might have loved him was already gone, you understand that some victories aren't about winning. They're about making sure the next person doesn't die the same way. I picked up the USB drive, held it between my fingers. Such a small thing to carry so much weight. How many victims total? I asked. That we know of 4, Harold Weston, 2 others who died in facilities, and you. The how many we don't know about. Vernon looked at me steadily. That's the question, isn't it? I put the USB drive in my pocket, stood up, shook his hand. 3 days, I said. Eddie, if this goes wrong, it won't. I walked out into the November afternoon and drove home. That night, late after everyone was asleep, I sat in my room with the door locked and a single desk lamp providing the only light. Blank paper, pen, no typing, no phone notes, nothing digital that could be discovered or deleted. At the top of the page, I wrote for Wren to be opened when she turns 18, from Grandpa who was never crazy. Then I started writing. Dear Wren, if you're reading this, you're 18 years old now, and I want you to know some things about your grandmother Alma. She would have loved you so much. She would have taught you how to make her famous lemon cake and told you stories about when your mom was little. I want you to understand the difference between real love and fake love. Real love doesn't need to control you or make you small. Real love doesn't hide things or make you question your own mind. I'm writing this because I never want you growing up thinking your grandpa was crazy. I never want you to look back and wonder if the stories you heard were true. The truth is, I wrote for an hour, told her about Alma, about the basement crying, about the voice that sounded like her mother but wasn't, about the choice I'd made to fight instead of disappear. If you've ever written a letter, you hope your grandchild never needs to read. You know, the hardest words to write aren't the ones explaining what happened. They're the ones explaining why you had to fight. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully and slid it into an envelope, sealed it. Wrote on the front, for Wren Thornton, to be opened on her 18th birthday. Then I called Dr. Hoffman's after-hours number. Celeste, it's Ed. I need you to hold an envelope for me, for Wren. If anything happens, she gets it when she turns 18. Silence on the other end, then I'll keep it safe. Thank you. I hung up and sat in the dark holding the sealed envelope. November 14th might go exactly according to plan. Vernon might arrest Bryce and Lamar. The evidence might be overwhelming. The FBI might reopen Harold Weston's case. Or it might not. Legal systems have delays. Prosecutors need time to build cases. Courts move slowly. And sometimes the bad guys walk free while the evidence gets reviewed. This letter was insurance, legacy, proof. If everything failed, if Bryce won somehow, if I ended up in a facility, if the legal machinery ground too slowly when Wren turned 18, she'd read my own handwritten words and know the truth. I sealed the envelope and sat in the dark, holding the paper that contained everything I wanted Wren to know if I failed. Then I spoke to Alma, as I did every night. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" The darkness didn't answer, but I felt yes. That feeling, the certainty that I was doing the right thing, carried me through the next 48 hours. Because what was coming would test whether that certainty was faith or delusion. And Margot would be the one who decided which. Sometimes the bravest thing a daughter can do is ask her father a question she's terrified to hear answered. And sometimes the hardest thing a father can do is not answer it because the truth would force her to choose between the two men in her life before she's ready. November 12th, Tuesday afternoon, 2 days before Wren's birthday. The Texas sun hung low in the sky, warm golden light spilling across the backyard. Wren was next door playing with the neighbor's daughter, their laughter carrying over the fence. Bryce was still at work, wouldn't be home for another hour. I sat on the patio, coffee going cold in my hand, watching the way the light caught the oak tree branches. The back door opened. Margot came out. No reason, no excuse. Just walked over and sat down in the chair next to mine. We sat in silence for 5 minutes, maybe longer, just the sound of distant children playing and leaves rustling in the November breeze. Then very softly, "Dad, Bryce gave me papers to sign, agreeing to the conservatorship. I don't know what to do." I didn't move, didn't look at her, just kept my eyes on the oak tree and chose my words very carefully. "Do you remember what your mother always said?" Margot was quiet for a moment. She said a lot of things. "Before signing anything, ask who benefits the most from this signature." "En ausenskekbish is Boris." Silence. I could feel her looking at me, could feel the weight of the question she wasn't asking. "Do you think Bryce is trying to hurt you?" If your child ever asks you whether they should sign something their spouse gave them, and you know that signature will destroy you, the temptation is to scream the truth. But sometimes the truth has to wait until they're ready to hear it without breaking. "I don't know what to do," she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. "And then don't do anything yet," I said gently. "Your mother also used to say, when you're confused, wait. Clarity comes." Margot sat there for another minute, didn't say anything else. Just stared at the yard, at the fence where Wren was playing at the oak tree, casting long shadows across the grass. Then she stood up and went back inside. I stayed on the patio until the sun started setting, thinking about Alma, about what she would have said if she were here, about whether I was protecting Margot or just postponing the inevitable moment when she'd have to choose. But I'd seen something in her face when she asked that question. Doubt. For the first time in months, Margot doubted Bryce. That was enough, for now. Before I reveal what I heard through that door, are you still with me? Comment A if Margot signs those papers, or B if she refuses, and add one reason why. What comes next goes from manipulation to something darker. Note, the following includes dramatized details for impact. That night late, everyone asleep. I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed listening to the house settle, thinking about the USB drive in my locked drawer, about Harold Weston's funeral, with no mourners, about Wren's birthday party in less than 48 hours. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Bryce's voice muffled through walls. On the phone. I got up quietly. Opened my door, just a crack. Stood in the darkness of the second-floor hallway. Light spilled from under his bedroom door. His voice was clear enough to hear. Private medical transport. High-end service. November 14th, 3 p.m. Yes, that's correct during the event. Pause. The subject may be non-cooperative. Have 2 attendants ready. Make sure it looks discreet, professional. We're talking about a family situation, very sensitive. Another pause. Cash payment on delivery. Yes. Destination is... Hold on. Let me send you the facility address separately. Subject. He called me subject. Like ordering furniture moved. Like scheduling trash pickup. Subject may be non-cooperative. I stood there in the dark hallway, hand pressed against the wall, processing what I was hearing. Ambulance. Private medical transport. scheduled for 3 p.m. on the 14th, right in the middle of Wren's birthday party. The plan crystallized in my mind. Bryce would announce Dr. Garrett's psychiatric evaluation in front of 50 witnesses, maximum social pressure, everyone believing I was incompetent, dangerous, needed care. Then, while everyone was still processing the shock, the ambulance would arrive. Professional, discreet, 2 attendants ready for a non-cooperative subject. They'd take me away before anyone could question it, before I could defend myself, before Margot could think twice about those papers she hadn't signed yet. Gone, just like Harold Weston, into a facility, isolated, controlled. Except Bryce was ordering this transport without a court order, without any legal authority, just a fake psychiatric evaluation and 50 witnesses who'd been convinced I needed help. Texas Penal Code, Section 20.02, false imprisonment, restraining someone without legal authority. And if he'd used phone or email to coordinate this across state lines, Title 18, United States Code, Section 1201, kidnapping conspiracy. Federal charges, heavy federal charges. I listened until Bryce finished his call, heard him move around the room, heard the light click off. Then I went back to my room, closed the door silently, and pulled out my phone. Open Signal, found Vernon's encrypted contact. Typed 3 words. Add a charge. Sent it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Vernon was awake. What charge? I typed quickly, fingers steady on the phone screen. False imprisonment. Kidnapping conspiracy. Private ambulance ordered for 3 p.m. November 14th to take me from party. No court order. 2 attendants. Non-cooperative subject. He's planning to kidnap me in front of 50 witnesses and call it medical care. The 3 dots appeared again. Stayed there for a long time. Then, got it. Recording everything. Eddie, this just became a much bigger case. I set the phone down and sat on the edge of my bed in the darkness. 48 hours. 48 hours until Wren's birthday party. Until Bryce's trap. Until the ambulance arrived with 2 attendants ready for a non-cooperative subject. 48 hours until I turned his trap inside out and showed 50 witnesses exactly what kind of man Bryce Thornton really was. Vernon's response came back within minutes. Documented. Case file updated. Eddie, you're building something bigger than conservatorship fraud now. This is RICO territory. Be careful. I wasn't being careful. I was being thorough. The room Bryce Thornton built to destroy me would become the room that destroyed him. I just needed 2 hours, 1 laptop, and the discipline to turn 4 months of evidence into a presentation that would play on his own LED screen in front of 50 witnesses. November 13th, Wednesday evening, 1 day before Wren's birthday. Everyone thought I'd gone to bed early, said I was tired, needed rest before tomorrow's big party. Instead, I waited until the house went quiet, until Bryce and Margot's bedroom light went dark, until I heard nothing but the settling sounds of an old house keeping secrets. Then I took my personal laptop, not the house computer, nothing Bryce could trace, and went down to the basement one final time. Opened the false panel, unlatched the steel door, stepped into the room that had held so much darkness. Turned on the overhead light. I set up my laptop on the desk, where Bryce used to sit, watching my every move through hidden cameras, listening to my daughter's voice, cataloging my granddaughter's words. Opened PowerPoint, created a new presentation. Slide 1 photo of the secret room itself, the desk, the computers, the audio mixer, the speaker system wired into ventilation shafts. Slide 2, screenshot of the AI voice cloning software, folder names clearly visible. Margot_dataset 847 files. Wren_dataset 312 files. Slide 3 bank statements showing the debt. $1.13 million across 3 loans and 1 failed mortgage. Slide 4 side-by-side comparison. Margot's real signature from the house purchase contract. The forged signature from the loan documents. Anyone with eyes could see they didn't match. Slide 5 audio file embedded in the slide. The ambulance call I'd recorded through Vernon's device. Bryce's voice saying, "The subject may be non-cooperative. Evidence doesn't care about emotion. It doesn't care if you're tired or scared or running out of time. It just sits there cold and factual, waiting for someone methodical enough to organize it into truth." I worked for 2 hours, added slides, checked formatting, made sure every piece of evidence was clear, undeniable, impossible to dismiss. When I finished, I had 17 slides. 17 slides that told the complete story of what Bryce Thornton had done. I created 3 USB backups, labeled them, put 1 in my laptop bag, 1 in my jacket pocket. one in the locked drawer upstairs where I kept Alma's jewelry. Then I uploaded an encrypted copy to Vernon's secure server, insurance, in case something happened to the physical drives. Finally, I stood up and looked around the room. The walls were still covered with photos. Me sleeping, me reading, me on the phone, Margot coming home from work, Ren playing in the yard. I took every single photo down, rolled them carefully so they wouldn't crease, put them in the evidence bag Vernon had given me. These didn't belong in Bryce's darkness anymore. I packed up my laptop, checked one last time to make sure I hadn't left anything behind. Then I walked out of the secret room, closed the steel door, latched it swung, the false panel back into place, stood at the bottom of the basement stairs and looked back at where the panel hid the door. I turned off the lights. In absolute darkness, I heard only my own breathing. Bryce Thornton built this room to destroy me. Tomorrow, the evidence from this room would destroy him. November 14th, 8 a.m., Ren's birthday. I woke up to my granddaughter bursting through my bedroom door, still in her pajamas, hair, wild eyes bright with excitement. Grandpa, wake up. I recorded a video. Last night I was playing detective. She grabbed my hand and pulled me out of bed, dragging me down the hall to her room. Pink walls, stuffed animals. The birthday dress hanging on the closet door ready for this afternoon's party. She picked up her tablet from the nightstand and climbed onto her bed, patting the space next to her. Look, I left it recording by accident when I was playing, and I got Daddy and Mr. Lamar talking. It's bomb. She pressed play. The video was 4 minutes long. Shot from a low angle, the tablet must have been propped against something in the living room. The camera pointed at the couch where two figures sat in dim lighting. Bryce's voice came through crystal clear. Old man won't know what hit him. After today he signs everything, or we pull the trigger at the party. Lamar's voice responded. You're sure the evaluation will hold up? Garrett's bulletproof. Been doing this for years. It's same playbook as Weston, Lamar said. Clean and simple, 2 weeks tops. Old man's in a facility, daughter's signing. Over assets we split the commission on the house sale. An 8-year-old playing detective. A tablet left recording by accident. And the confession the FBI needed handed to me in a pink bedroom 8 hours before the birthday party. Sometimes God has a sense of humor. Harold Weston. Bryce's voice continued on the video. That was our best run. $94,000 in broker fees. You got what, $180 in legal? $178, Lamar corrected. But yeah, clean pattern. This one's even easier. He's already living in the house. Ren looked at me proud of her detective work, completely unaware she'd just captured the smoking gun that would send her father to federal prison. Do you like my video, Grandpa? I looked at the screen. At Bryce and Lamar admitting to Harold Weston, admitting to the pattern, admitting to everything. Then I looked at my granddaughter, 8 years old, pink pajamas with unicorns on them, holding a tablet that contained the confession the FBI had been trying to obtain for 6 months. I pulled out my phone, connected it to her tablet with a cable, transferred the file. Open signal, sent it directly to Vernon with one message. Ren's detective game, full confession. Bryce and Lamar on Harold Weston. Audio clear. This is it. Then I bent down and kissed Ren's forehead. This is the best video I've ever seen in my life. She beamed, hugged me tight, ran off to get ready for her party, leaving me sitting on her pink bed, holding a phone with evidence that would change everything. 6 hours. 6 hours until 1 p.m. when the party started. 6 hours until I walked into Uchi restaurant with Ren's video on my phone, 3 USB drives in my pocket, and a presentation ready to play on Bryce Thornton's LED screen. 6 hours until his world ended. 6 hours vanished in the machinery of getting ready. Breakfast, showers, Ren trying on her pink dress 3 times, Margot doing her hair, Bryce on the phone coordinating last-minute details, and me sitting in my room with a laptop bag containing 17 slides and 3 USB drives waiting for 1 p.m. The pink balloons bobbed against the restaurant ceiling like carnival confetti, and 50 smiling faces surrounded my granddaughter, while my son-in-law checked his watch every 90 seconds. Uchi Restaurant's private event hall was exactly what you'd expect for an upscale Austin children's party. Pink and gold decorations everywhere, streamers cascading from ceiling fixtures, a 3-tier cupcake tower on the main table, each cupcake topped with vanilla frosting and edible glitter. Round tables arranged in a semicircle, 50 chairs for 50 guests, white tablecloths catching the afternoon light, streaming through tall windows. Children ran between tables laughing, playing tag, despite their parents' gentle warnings to slow down. Adults stood in clusters with champagne flutes making small talk, complimenting Bryce and Margot on the venue choice, asking Wren about school and hobbies. And mounted on the far wall exactly where Bryce had planned it, a massive LED screen, 70 inches, crystal clear display, currently showing a rotating slideshow of Wren's baby photos. I sat at a table near the back laptop bag beside my chair, watching everything with the calm focus of a man who'd spent 4 months preparing for this exact moment. Bryce moved through the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser, hugging Wren, posing for photos with her classmates, shaking hands with Margot's colleagues from the paralegal firm, playing the role of devoted father and generous host. But every 90 seconds he checked his watch. Margot stayed close to Wren, smiling at guests, but with visible tension in her shoulders. She hadn't looked at me once since we arrived, hadn't asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted to sit closer to the birthday girl. She was avoiding me, deliberately, and sitting at a table near the exit, nursing a glass of sparkling water and scanning the room with professional detachment, Dr. Dexter Garrett, 52 years old, cold hands, fake psychiatric evaluation in his briefcase. A stranger to Wren. No connection to our family, except the one Bryce had arranged. But here he was at an 8-year-old's birthday party, watching me with the clinical focus of someone conducting an ongoing assessment. I stood up, told the woman sitting next to me I needed air, walked outside through the side entrance. The November afternoon was cool, clear, beautiful. South Lamar Boulevard hummed with Saturday traffic, people walking dogs, couples heading to brunch at nearby cafes. And parked in the loading zone directly in front of the restaurant, a white Mercedes ambulance, professional vinyl lettering along the side, MedTrans Solutions, private medical transport. 2 people sat in the front seats, both wearing medical scrubs. The engine was idling. I stood there for 30 seconds, hands in my pockets, looking at the ambulance that was supposed to take me away. Then I walked back inside. Bryce's plan crystallized with perfect clarity. Public accusation in front of 50 witnesses. Dr. Garrett's assessment lending medical authority. Margot's tears making it seem like loving family intervention. Then, before anyone could question it, before I could defend myself, the ambulance would arrive. Professional, discreet. 2 attendants ready for a non-cooperative subject. Gone, except I wasn't going anywhere. I sat back down at my table, opened my laptop bag, pulled out the computer, pressed the power button. While everyone was distracted by Wren opening presents, I connected my laptop to the restaurant's AV system via Bluetooth, the same system that controlled the LED screen currently showing baby photos. Connection established, screen available, ready. I loaded the folder labeled Evidence, 47 files, 17 slides, 4 months of documentation. Then I closed the laptop lid and waited. At 2:45 p.m. Margot brought out the birthday cake. 8 candles arranged in a circle. Everyone sang happy birthday. Wren closed her eyes, made a wish, blew them all out in one breath. The crowd applauded. Bryce checked his watch again. 15 minutes until 3 p.m. 15 minutes until his trap sprang. At exactly 3 o'clock, Bryce stepped to the front of the room and tapped his champagne glass with a silver fork. The clear, ringing sound cut through the conversation. "Everyone can, I have your attention, please." The room quieted. 50 faces turned toward him. "At first, I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate Wren's 8th birthday. It means the world to us." Smiles. Nods. Someone said, "She's grown so much." Bryce smiled back. Then his expression shifted, became serious, concerned. "I also need to share something difficult with all of you. Something about our family that's been developing over the past few months." The room went completely silent. My father-in-law, Clarence, he gestured toward me. 50 pairs of eyes turned. Has been experiencing significant cognitive decline, memory issues, confusion, episodes where he doesn't quite seem to know where he is or what's happening around him. Gasps, murmurs, concerned glances in my direction. I sat perfectly still, expression neutral, hands folded in my lap. Dr. Garrett here has completed a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. Bryce nodded toward the doctor, who stood up on cue. The assessment shows clear indicators of impaired executive function, compromised decision-making capacity, and the need for supervised care. Dr. Garrett added in his professional voice, "This is about ensuring Mr. Mercer receives proper care in a safe environment." This morning, Bryce continued, voice heavy with stage regret. We filed a conservatorship petition with Travis County Courthouse, and we've arranged for professional medical transport to take Clarence to a care facility where he can get the help he needs, for his safety and his dignity. The silence was absolute. 50 witnesses, all of them now believing I was mentally incompetent, all of them seeing Margot crying into her napkin, which only confirmed the narrative, all of them watching Bryce play the role of concerned son-in-law, making the hardest decision of his life. Ren's small voice cut through the quiet. "Daddy, what's wrong with Grandpa?" Bryce knelt down beside her, put his hand on her shoulder. "Grandpa is sick, sweetheart, but we're gonna make sure he gets better." He stood back up, looked directly at me. "Dad, the transport team is waiting outside. They're very gentle, very professional. We're going to take you somewhere you'll be comfortable and safe." He signaled to Dr. Garrett, who started moving toward the exit, toward the white Mercedes ambulance idling outside with 2 attendants ready. I placed my hand on the laptop keyboard and nodded slightly. I pressed enter. The screen flickered blue, then white, and 50 pairs of eyes turned from me to the wall-mounted display. I stood up slowly, calmly, like a man who'd spent 30 years giving presentations to corporate boards and knew exactly how to command a room. "Thank you for that thoughtful announcement, Bryce," I said clearly, my voice carried across the silent hall. "Since we have everyone's attention, I'd like to share a family slideshow." Bryce's face went from concerned sympathy to confusion in half a second. "Dad, I don't think it'll just take a minute," I said. "I put something together for Ren's birthday." I clicked to the first slide. The LED screen filled with a photograph of a room, a basement room, concrete walls, a desk with 2 laptops, an audio mixer, speaker system with wires running into ceiling ventilation, surveillance screenshots covering every wall. Complete silence. Someone whispered, "What is that?" I advanced to the next slide. A screenshot, computer software interface, clear as day across the 70-inch screen. AI Voice Synthesis Pro, voice cloning module, and below it, 2 folder names. Margot _ dataset 847 audio files. Ren _ dataset 312 files. "What?" Margot's voice from somewhere behind me, small, confused. "What is that?" I clicked to slide 3. Bank statements. 3 separate loans, 1 failed mortgage. Names, account numbers, dollar amounts. Total debt $1,130,000. Borrower Bryce Thornton. And on 2 of those loans in the cosigner field, Margot Mercer Thornton. Except Margot hadn't signed them. I advanced to slide 4. The 4th slide filled the screen, 2 signatures side by side, one shaking and uncertain, one steady, both supposedly mine. On the left, Margot's real signature from our house purchase contract 4 years ago, confident, flowing, the way she'd signed documents her entire adult life. On the right, the signature from the loan documents, different stroke, different pressure, different formation of the letter M. Forged. The room stayed silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. Not confusion anymore, understanding, dawning horror. I looked across the room. Lamar Sutton, the attorney I'd seen exactly once before at a dinner party 2 months ago, had gone pale. He was edging toward the exit, slowly, trying not to draw attention. Bryce stood frozen mid-gesture, one hand still raised toward where Dr. Garrett sat. His face had drained of all color, white as paper. Dr. Garrett had stopped nodding, had stopped looking professional and authoritative, just sat there staring at the screen like a man watching his career end in real time. I clicked to the final slide. "And lastly," I said, "I'd like to share a video my granddaughter made. Ren's been learning about detective work. She's quite good at it." The screen went black for a second. Then, video playback started. Low angle, dim lighting. The timestamp in the corner read November 13th, 2024, 9:47 p.m. 2 figures on a couch, clearly visible, clearly recognizable. Bryce and Lamar. Bryce's voice came through the hall's speaker system, crystal clear. "Old man won't know what hit him. After today he signs everything, or we pull the trigger at the party." Lamar's response, "You're sure the evaluation will hold up?" "Oh, the papot is the dasquace." Garrett's bulletproof, been doing this for years. And same playbook as Weston, Lamar said. Audio perfectly clear, no ambiguity. Clean and simple 2 weeks tops. Old man's in a facility, daughter's signing, over assets we split the commission on the house sale. And my granddaughter's voice clear as Sunday morning from earlier that day when she'd shown me her detective work. This is the best video I've ever seen in my life. Someone in the back of the room stood up so fast his chair fell over. Douglas Hartwell. 71 years old. I'd never met him before today, but I recognized him from the photos Vernon had shown me. Harold Weston's business partner for 30 years before Harold's conservatorship destroyed everything. At Harold Weston, he shouted, voice cracking. My God, Bryce, you did this to Harold too. Lamar Sutton bolted, actually ran for the fire exit, shoving past a waiter carrying champagne. Bryce's voice rose above the sudden chaos. This is all fabricated. My father-in-law is clearly delusional. Someone call those transport staff. But no one was looking at him anymore. 50 witnesses had just watched 4 months of evidence in 4 minutes. Had just heard Bryce Thornton confess to conspiracy on video. Had just learned that the concerned son-in-law, declaring his father-in-law incompetent, was actually the one running a criminal fraud operation. No one moved to help him. No one called for the transport staff. They just stared. Bryce dropped the folder Dr. Garrett had prepared. Papers scattered across the floor. The psychiatric evaluation that was supposed to justify my kidnapping. I looked at Margot. She'd slumped in her chair, both hands gripping the table edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face had gone completely white. She was staring at the screen at the frozen image of her husband and Lamar Sutton on that couch, and I could see the exact moment everything she'd believed shattered. The conservatorship papers Bryce had given her to sign, the concern about my memory, the suggestions about facilities, all of it recontextualizing in real time. And Ren stood in her pink birthday dress party hat, crooked on her head, watching her father with an expression I'd spent 8 years hoping she'd never need. The look children get when they first understand that adults aren't always good, that fathers can lie. The first agent through the door held his badge high enough that even the people in the back could see the 3 gold letters. FBI, nobody move. 4 of them spreading through the hall. The tallest one, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, walked straight to where Bryce stood. Frozen. Bryce Thornton. Bryce's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, calculation, panic. Yes, as Special Agent Marcus Griffin, FBI Austin Field Office, White Collar Crime Division. He produced a folded document. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud in violation of Title 18 United States Code. Section 1343, bank fraud, in violation of Section 1344, aggravated identity theft, in violation of Section 10, 28, conspiracy to commit conservatorship fraud, and unlawful electronic surveillance, in violation of Section 2511. The room went silent. 50 people watching a birthday party turned into something else. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Another agent moved in. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. This is insane. Hands behind your back, now. Bryce complied. The handcuffs made a sound I'd only heard in movies, that metallic click that means something permanent just happened. Across the room, 2 agents had Lamar against the wall. His voice rose. I'm an attorney. This is harassment. One agent replied, too quiet to hear, but Lamar's face went slack. Vernon Harding stood near the entrance in his gray suit. When his eyes found mine, he gave a single nod. Ren pressed against my leg, trembling. I placed my hand on her head. Oh, right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand these rights? Bryce said nothing. Mr. Thornton, do you understand? Yes, barely a whisper. Margot stood 10 feet away, one hand covering her mouth, watching her husband being arrested at their child's birthday party. Take him to the vehicle. They walked Bryce through the crowd. People stepped back. Nobody spoke. The LED screen behind me still cycled through evidence slides. Secret room, voice data sets, forged signatures. At the door, Bryce turned, found me. For 3 seconds, we looked at each other. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just held his gaze until the agents turned him away. Ren's voice small. Grandpa! I'm here, sweetheart. What happens now? I didn't have an answer that would make sense to an 8-year-old. Oh, the private room was smaller, quieter. Just me and Margot, and the weight of everything that had shattered. She sat across from me, tears running down her face. 5 minutes of silence. I let her have it. Finally, since when did you know? The first night, I heard you crying in the basement. Her eyes widened. I don't remember that. You wouldn't. He was drugging your chamomile tea, low-dose benzodiazepine, just enough to keep you confused. She shivered. I found the burner phone on October 23rd, the secret room on November 1st. The voice cloning datasets 847 audio files of you 312 of Ren. He'd been recording you for months, building material to fake distress calls to manufacture evidence of your incompetence. The debt, she whispered. The 1.13 million. They forged your signatures, but not your hand. He needed you to look financially unstable before the conservatorship hearing. Margot pressed both hands to her face. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'd known this question was coming. Because if I told you earlier, you'd face a choice no mother should make, believe your father or believe your husband. I didn't want you to choose until the truth could speak for itself. She looked up, tears still falling. You didn't trust me to believe you. I didn't trust him to let you. He'd spent 9 years conditioning you to doubt yourself. I needed proof so overwhelming that even your love for him couldn't explain it away. Silence. Outside muffled voices, police probably taking statements. Margot walked to the window, looked out at South Lamar Boulevard. Mom would have figured it out sooner. Your mother was brilliant, but she also taught me that protecting people you love sometimes means waiting for the right moment instead of the fastest one. She turned back, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen since she was small, that absolute trust children have before the world teaches them otherwise. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For not seeing it, for letting him. Her voice failed. I stood across the room, pulled her into the kind of hug I hadn't given her since Alma's funeral. She buried her head in my shoulder and cried the way she used to when she was Ren's age. I held my daughter and thought about all the nights I'd lain awake in that guest room, gathering evidence piece by piece, waiting. Outside the window, Austin drifted into late afternoon light. Through the glass, I could see birthday balloons still bobbing in the main hall, their cheerful colors refusing to acknowledge what had just collapsed. For the first time since Alma passed, I breathed completely. Then Vernon knocked. He stepped inside and handed me a business card. Dr. Patricia Vance, Texas Medical Board Division of Professional Conduct. Garrett's supervisor, Vernon said. She'll want to speak with you next week. I turned the card over, a handwritten note. Case number MB-2024-1847. They're investigating him. They're investigating everyone connected to this. Garrett, the evaluator, Bryce had lined up the facility where he planned to place you. This goes deeper than one conservatorship attempt. Margot stared at Vernon. How many others? We're still counting. Harold Weston wasn't the only one. There's a pattern going back 6 years. Elderly targets manufactured incompetence, rushed hearings. Bryce got commission on every placement. The number hit me wrong. 6 years, but he's only been married to your daughter for 9. He was running this scheme before you met him, before Ren was born. Margot was cover-respectable wife, stable family, someone to point to when anyone questioned his motives. Margot made a sound like something breaking. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. Not my regular phone, the burner phone I'd kept as evidence. I pulled it out. One new message from an unknown number. 4 words. Garrett wants to cooperate. Vernon knocked at 9:30 that evening, gray suit wrinkled from 12-hour day, carrying leather briefcase that hadn't left his hand since the arrests. Got a minute? I stepped aside, let him into the hotel room I'd rented for the night. Margot and Ren were still at the house, our house though. It didn't feel like ours anymore, and I'd needed distance from the basement, from the guest room, from everything that had happened in those walls. Vernon set the briefcase on the small table, pulled out a folder, thick enough to be a novel. Garrett made a call. His lawyer. That was the first call. 3:14 p.m., 2 minutes after Bryce got cuffed. By 3:20 p.m., he was calling my office asking to cooperate. Vernon's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The man saw which way the wind was blowing. I sat on the edge of the bed. What's he offering? Everything. Vernon opened the folder, pulled out a stack of bank statements. $45,000 cash. Bryce paid Garrett $45,000 for that assessment, declaring you incompetent. And Garrett kept meticulous records. He's done this 3 times before with Lamar. The number sat in my chest like a stone. $45,000 to destroy a man's autonomy, to manufacture incompetence to justify locking someone away. Harold Weston was one of the 3, I asked. Vernon nodded. March 2022, same pattern, same players, Garrett, Lamar, Bryce. And Garrett documented all of it. I thought about Douglas Hartwell at the party, the way he'd leaped up when Wren's video played, the way his face had gone white hearing Bryce say Weston's name. The other two cases, Vernon pulled out more documents. Evelyn Martinez, 68, conservatorship, established November 2020, died in facility 4 months later. Pneumonia, but the medical records show she was being oversedated. Ann Thomas Brenner, 73, conservatorship, January 2023. He's still alive, still in a facility in Round Rock, still paying Lamar $1,800 a month to manage assets he's not allowed to touch. 3 times before, 3 other families destroyed by the exact same playbook. Garrett's giving you all of this. It's signed affidavit, bank records, email correspondence with Lamar, text messages with Bryce going back 2 years. The man documented everything. Vernon pulled out another sheet, this one, a single-page official letterhead at the top. Texas Medical Board suspended his license this afternoon. Federal prosecutors are preparing healthcare fraud charges, billing for services not rendered, falsifying medical records, conspiracy to defraud. He's looking at 10 years. But he's cooperating. Full testimony against Bryce and Lamar. If he delivers what he's promising, prosecution might recommend 5 years, possibly probation. Vernon's voice went flat. He'll never practice medicine again, but he might avoid prison. I thought about Garrett at the dinner table 3 weeks ago, asking me what year it was, what city I lived in, counting backward from 100 by 7s. The MMSE screening disguised as casual conversation. He'd known exactly what he was doing. The other cases, I said, the conservatorships, can they be reversed? The bars, already in motion. Martinez's daughter is filing to have the conservatorship posthumously vacated. It won't bring her mother back, but it clears her name. Brenner's son is meeting with attorneys tomorrow, and Harold Weston's daughter is already contacting attorneys. $2.3 million her father lost to this scheme. She'll get it back now. I looked out the hotel window at Austin's downtown lights. Somewhere out there, families were getting phone calls tonight. Lawyers explaining that the conservatorships that destroyed their loved ones were built on fraud, that the doctors who diagnosed dementia were paid to lie, that the money was recoverable. Harold Weston's daughter, Douglas Hartwell's business partner's daughter, would get her father's $2.3 million back. How long have you been investigating this? I asked. Vernon closed the folder. 6 months. White-collar crime division flagged a pattern in conservatorship filings. Same attorney, same evaluator, same facility recommendations. But we couldn't get close enough, couldn't get evidence that would hold up in court. Everything looked legitimate on paper. Until Wren's video. Vernon's voice softened. That 8-year-old walked up to Lamar and Bryce with an iPad, recorded them, confessing to conspiracy, walked away, and neither of them had any idea what she'd done. We'd been running surveillance for months, wiretap applications, financial forensics. She got it in 90 seconds. I thought about Wren in her pink birthday dress party hat, crooked on her head, announcing she'd made the best video of her life, the way she'd held that iPad like a trophy. What happens now? I asked. Bryce and Lamar are being held without bail flight, risk assets, and offshore accounts we're still tracing. Preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. With Garrett's testimony and Wren's video prosecutions looking at wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. 25 years minimum. Vernon stood, picked up the briefcase. Thank you, Eddie. Without that video, without your patience, we'd still be building circumstantial cases. I shook my head. Thank Wren. That 8-year-old did what the FBI couldn't do in 6 months. Vernon smiled, the tired smile of a prosecutor who just landed a career case. He left, and I sat in the quiet hotel room thinking about an 8-year-old girl playing detective, not knowing she was dismantling a criminal conspiracy that had destroyed 4 families and counting. How do you explain that kind of courage to a child who doesn't even know she has it? I didn't explain it. Not that night in the hotel room, not the next morning, when Wren asked why we weren't going home. Some things children understand through living them, not through words. She'd been brave because she didn't know she needed to be. That was its own kind of grace. Vernon's email arrived at 6:48 on Monday morning. Subject line, reading simply, formal charges filed. And I scrolled through 9 pages of federal and state counts while coffee went cold in my hand. United States of America versus Bryce Edward Thornton. Wire fraud in violation of Title 18. United States Code, Section 1343, maximum penalty, 20 years, imprisonment, and $250,000 fine. Bank fraud in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1344, maximum penalty 30 years, imprisonment and $1 million fine. Aggravated identity theft in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1028. A mandatory minimum 2 years consecutive to any other sentence imposed. Conspiracy to defraud in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 371. Unlawful electronic surveillance in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2511. The federal counts went on for 6 pages. Then came the Texas charges. Injury to an elderly individual, Texas Penal Code. Section 22.04, second-degree felony for administering benzodiazepine without consent. Conspiracy to commit false imprisonment, Texas Penal Code, Section 20.02 for the ambulance plot. I stopped reading at the ambulance charge. My hand shook enough that coffee sloshed onto the temporary apartment's laminate counter. They were charging him for the ambulance he had had, waiting outside Wren's birthday party, the one that was supposed to take me away before I could show the evidence, before truth could speak. Vernon's note at the bottom. Bank fraud carries heaviest exposure, 30 years for the forged signatures. Bail denied. Judge cited sophistication of scheme and offshore account indicators. Trial likely spring 2025 unless he pleads. Lamar Sutton suspended by the state bar as of this morning, disbarment proceedings to follow federal conspiracy charges filed separately. 30 years. The bank fraud alone carried 30 years. I called Margot. She answered on the first ring, voice rough, like she'd been crying. "Hey, the charges came through," I said. "I know. Vernon copied me. The loans are voided. You're not liable for his fraud. The house, the account's frozen until civil proceedings." Silence on the other end. Then, "I can't go back to that house." "You don't have to. Every room. I see the cameras, the secret room, the basement door." Her voice broke. "I keep thinking about all the nights I drank that T went to bed feeling fuzzy, woke up confused. He was drugging me in my own kitchen." "I know. There's a 3-bedroom apartment in Zilker, month-to-month lease. I'm signing papers this afternoon." She paused. "Will you take the 3rd bedroom, just until we figure things out?" And I looked around the hotel room 2 nights in a space that wasn't mine, wasn't anyone's. "Yes?" "Okay." Another pause. "Grandpa says..." She hadn't called me that since Wren was born. "Yeah? Thank you for not telling me to forgive him." I closed my eyes. "You don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything." The apartment was small. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, kitchen, that opened into a living room barely big enough for a couch and television. The 3rd bedroom, mine, had space for a twin bed and a dresser. No closet, just a tension rod across one corner. It was perfect. We ate together every night. Takeout pizza, instant noodles. Margot's attempts at stir-fry that came out too salty, too sweet, too something. But we ate it anyway because it was ours. Real family meals, the kind we'd never had in that big house with the basement and the locks and the secret room. Margot filed divorce proceedings on November 22nd. Filed a civil suit 3 days later. Fraud, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Vernon said the criminal restitution would come first, but she wanted her own case, her own victory. Wren started seeing Dr. Rachel Drummond every Tuesday at 5:15. Drummond was 42, specialized in childhood trauma therapy, and had spent 15 years helping children process the incomprehensible truth that parents sometimes hurt people. She had an office in South Austin with toys on the floor and tissues on every table and a voice that never went higher than necessary. Tuesday evenings at 5:15, Margot drove Wren to Dr. Drummond's office, and I sat alone in the 3rd bedroom that wasn't mine, in an apartment that wasn't ours, building a life from wreckage. Wren didn't understand everything. Didn't understand wire fraud or conservatorship conspiracy or what it meant that Daddy's bail had been denied. But she understood that Daddy had done something wrong, that Grandpa had protected the family, that Mommy was sad and angry at the same time, and Dr. Drummond said, that was okay. Feelings could be more than one thing. 3 weeks after the arrests, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. We were folding laundry together, her small hands matching socks while I folded towels when she said it. "Grandpa is Daddy bad man." I stopped mid-fold, looked at her clear 8-year-old eyes that had seen too much in 3 weeks. I thought about Bryce reading Miranda Rights at Wren's birthday party, about the secret room and the voice data sets and the forged signatures, about Harold Weston dying alone in a memory care facility, about Evelyn Martinez over-sedated until pneumonia took her, about the ambulance waiting to take me away. I thought about how easy it would be to say yes, to give her a simple answer, to draw a line between good people and bad people and put her father on the other side. But Alma had taught me that the world was more complicated than that people contain multitudes, that condemning actions didn't require condemning souls. Daddy did very bad things, I said slowly. That and whether Daddy is bad man, two different questions. You don't have to answer now. Wren looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. She seemed satisfied with permission not to know. But I wondered how long that grace would last. Grace lasted longer than I expected. Wren went to therapy every Tuesday, came home with new words for feelings she'd always had but never named. Angry, sad, scared, relieved, missing someone who hurt you. Dr. Drummond gave her vocabulary for complexity, and she carried it like armor. The parcel arrived from Dr. Hoffman's clinic on a Tuesday morning, small padded envelope with my name in her precise physician's handwriting and a note clipped to the front. Ed, you don't need this anymore, but I think you should keep it. Some truths matter even when the crisis passes. Celeste? I knew what it was before I opened it. The sealed envelope I'd left with her that afternoon in late October, when I still thought I might lose everything. When the conservatorship hearing was scheduled for November 21st, and I had no proof yet, just suspicions and a burner phone, and the sound of my daughter crying in a basement I wasn't allowed to enter. I sat in the third bedroom, my bedroom now, though I still thought of it as temporary, and held the envelope for 5 minutes before opening it. The letter inside was 3 pages handwritten on hotel stationery. I recognized my own writing from 6 weeks ago, when my hand had shaken enough that the letters slanted wrong. Dear Wren, by the time you read this, you'll be 18 years old, and I hope to God I'm still around to hand it to you myself. But if I'm not, if the hearing goes the way Bryce has planned, I need you to know some things your grandfather wanted to say when he still could. I'd written about Alma, about what real love looked like versus the performance Bryce had been staging, about the drug tea and the secret room and the voice recordings, about why I'd never wanted her to grow up thinking her grandfather was crazy even if a court said otherwise. I'd written it the night I found the secret room, when I still thought I might lose everything, when the only thing I could control was leaving her the truth. The last paragraph said, "Your grandfather loved you enough to fight when fighting seemed impossible. If you're reading this because I lost that fight, know that I tried, and know that whatever Bryce told you about me being incompetent or confused or dangerous, it was always a lie. You deserve better than lies." I finished reading, folded the pages, carefully slid them back into the envelope. I didn't throw it away. There was a drawer in the small dresser bottom, left where I kept things that mattered. Alma's wedding ring, the funeral program, a photo of Margot at 6 years old, gap-toothed and laughing. I placed the envelope there under everything else. When Wren turned 18, when she asked the questions she couldn't ask, now this would still be true. The ending had turned out better than I'd feared, but the truth I'd written in that hotel room about fighting, about love, about refusing to let lies win, that hadn't changed. Some things were worth preserving even when the crisis passed. Oh, the house sold mid-December. Margot got the call from the realtor on a Wednesday morning, sat at the tiny kitchen table staring at her phone like it had delivered news from another planet. The court confirmed it, she said. Marital property law. The house proceeds are mine unaffected by his debts. I'm putting everything in trust for Wren. I nodded, didn't say what I was thinking, that blood money from a house where her husband had drugged her and recorded her and built a secret room to manufacture evidence of insanity was still money Wren would need someday. College, medical bills, a life. Take the money, leave the trauma. The FBI unsealed the basement. Margot continued. Crime scenes released. New buyers are a young family, 2 kids baby on the way. They want to close before Christmas. Good. I need to do a final walkthrough. Make sure nothing's left. She looked at me. Will you come? I didn't want to. Didn't want to see that basement door again, that guest room, where I'd spent 3 months gathering evidence piece by piece. But Margot's face said she couldn't do it alone. Yes, we brought Wren. Margot said it was important she see the house one last time, that leaving without saying goodbye created ghosts. Dr. Drummond had apparently agreed. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The oak tree in front had lost its leaves branches bare against December sky. The driveway was empty, no white Mercedes, no Bryce's Audi, just cracked concrete and oil stains. We stood at the threshold together. "Anything you want to take?" Margot asked Ren. Ren shook her head. "My toys are at the apartment. We can go upstairs, check your old room." "I don't want to." Margot squeezed her shoulder. "Okay." The basement door stood open, just an ordinary wooden door. Now no steel, no electronic lock, no secret behind the false wall that the FBI had sledgehammered into rubble. Ren looked at it, then at me. "Grandpa, is there anything under the basement in this house, like in the detective shows?" I looked at the now ordinary door, at the space that had held so much fear and so many secrets. The FBI had dismantled everything, removed the steel door, demolished the false wall, photographed and cataloged and hauled away every piece of equipment Bryce had used to manufacture evidence. The secret room was gone. The voice cloning software seized. The hidden cameras removed. Nothing remained but ordinary basement space, concrete floor, water heater, storage shelves. "Nothing there, sweetheart," I said. "Nothing at all." She seemed satisfied with that. Margot did a quick walk through the main floor, checked closets, looked under sinks, made sure nothing personal remained. 10 minutes, and we were done. We walked down the front path together, past the oak tree where Ren used to play, past the driveway where Bryce had parked that white Mercedes, past the mailbox with someone else's name already on the label. Margot looked back, once her hand tight on Ren's shoulder. Some last glance at the life she had built here, the marriage that had turned out to be performance and fraud and systematic cruelty disguised as love. I didn't turn to look back. Some places aren't worth remembering by turning back. They only deserve to be walked past and left behind. We left that house behind and drove to something better. Not immediately. First came the Zilker apartment, the temporary space, the three of us learning how to be a family without fear in the walls. But by January, we were ready for something permanent. The elevator climbed to the 12th floor, and Ren pressed her face against the glass, watching Austin shrink below, announcing she could see the entire world from here. "Grandpa, this one doesn't have a basement, right? You said no basements?" I looked down at her, at those clear eyes that had seen too much and still found room for questions about architecture. 12 floors up, sweetheart. Nothing but sky underneath us." She grinned, satisfied. The apartment had 3 bedrooms. Real bedrooms this time, not temporary spaces we were borrowing from Crisis. South Congress area, floor-to-ceiling windows, balcony facing east, so the sunrise came in gold every morning. Margot signed the lease without hesitation. Not asking me to take the 3rd bedroom this time, just assuming I would. Joint decision, not invitation. Family. Margot decorated the living room herself. Couch from the temporary apartment. New coffee table. The old one had too many memories of Bryce's scripts and manufactured concern. Ren's artwork on the refrigerator. And on the wall opposite the windows where morning light would hit it first thing every day, Margot hung a photo I hadn't seen in months. Alma. 58 years old in that picture, laughing at something off-camera, hair going silver at the temples, wearing the blue sweater I'd given her for Christmas 3 years before the cancer. Margot placed the frame, carefully stepped back, looked at it for a long moment. "Mom belongs here," she said quietly. "With us, I shouldn't have put her away." I didn't say anything, just stood next to my daughter and looked at my wife, and thought about how some absences become presences if you let them. How honoring the dead doesn't mean living in the past, it means carrying them forward into whatever comes next. Ren named every corner, reading nook, detective headquarters, snack zone. She arranged her toys with the precision of someone designing a fortress, which maybe she was. Building safety one stuffed animal at a time. I stood at the window overlooking Austin downtown, lights starting to flicker on as January evening came in, cold and clear, and realized something I hadn't felt since Alma died. I wasn't lonely. Not because the apartment was nice or the view was good. Because I was with people who needed me, and I needed them. That simple equation finally balanced. A week after moving in, Ren and I sat on the balcony watching Austin settle into night. She had warm milk in a mug shaped like a cat. I had coffee decaf because 12 hours of sleep had taught me things about rest I'd forgotten during the months of gathering evidence. She swung her legs too short to reach the balcony floor from the chair and asked the question without preamble. "Grandpa, why do adults lie?" I could have deflected, could have said something about how sometimes people make mistakes or how lying is complicated. But Ren had earned truth. Out of fear, sweetheart. People lie when they believe the truth isn't enough to get what they want. She thought about that, sipped her milk. So people who aren't afraid don't lie. People who aren't afraid lie less. But you... I looked at her, this 8-year-old who'd walked up to 2 conspirators with an iPad and documented their confession without understanding she was dismantling a criminal enterprise. You're the bravest person I know. She grinned gap-toothed and delighted. I was just playing Detective Grandpa. Then she hopped off the chair and ran inside, done with philosophy, ready for whatever game came next. I stayed on the balcony and smiled. Oh, ordinary January morning, sunrise coming in gold through the 12th floor windows. Margot making tea in the kitchen, chamomile same as always, but this time she brewed it herself, and nobody was slipping anything into the cup. Wren still asleep, stuffed detective clutched under one arm. I sat on the balcony with coffee I'd made in our kitchen, using our pot, drinking from a mug that said World's OKS Grandpa that Wren had picked out at a gift shop. First time in 7 months I'd drunk morning coffee without wondering what might be in it. I thought about Alma, about what she'd say if she could see this, her husband and daughter and granddaughter rebuilding something good from wreckage. She'd laugh probably. Say something like, I knew it. I knew you'd never give up. I thought about Harold Weston. Never met him, never would. But his name was cleared. Now his conservatorship voided his daughter getting back what had been stolen. That could have been my funeral Douglas Hartwell attended. Could have been my estate drained, and my granddaughter left with nothing but questions about why Grandpa went crazy. But it wasn't. I looked through the glass at Margot humming while she made breakfast. At Wren's bedroom door, closed normal, no locks on the outside. At Alma's picture on the wall, catching morning light exactly the way Margot had planned. Completely ordinary, utterly beautiful. Then I turned back to the balcony to Austin spreading out below in January sun, and I'm going to tell you something directly. If you're listening, if you're reading this and you recognize something in it, if someone's trying to convince you you're losing your mind, if the people who say they love you are manufacturing evidence of your incompetence, if you're being drugged or recorded or systematically isolated, trust yourself first. Find someone like Vernon, someone who spent 42 years learning how fraud works and won't stop until it's dismantled. If you have an 8-year-old grandchild who wants to play detective, listen to her. Children see things adults miss because they haven't learned yet what's supposed to be invisible. Document everything. Keep evidence. Stay patient when patience feels impossible. And know that the people trying to control you are counting on you giving up, on you believing their version of reality over your own. Don't give them that. I lifted the coffee cup, nothing spiked in it, nothing hidden, just coffee. I'd brewed myself in a kitchen I'd chosen on a balcony 12 floors above any basement. The Austin January sun warmed my face. Margot hummed in the kitchen. Wren's stuffed detective sat on the couch inside. That basement was sealed shut, the fake wall destroyed, the secret room dismantled and hauled away as evidence. And the man they wanted to institutionalize, the one they'd planned to drug and discredit and lock away, was sitting on a 12th floor balcony drinking morning coffee in Austin January sun without any fear at all. And to you listening to my story, remember this family betrayal doesn't announce itself with warning signs. It arrives wearing the mask of concern. Looking back, my biggest mistake wasn't trusting Bryce too much. It was almost trusting myself too little. When he suggested I was confused when he questioned my memory, I came dangerously close to believing him. Don't make my mistake. If someone's trying to convince you you're losing your mind, document everything. Trust your instincts before you trust their version of reality. The hardest truth about family betrayal is that it exploits the one thing you never thought to guard your trust in the people closest to you. Bryce understood that. He knew I'd never suspect family betrayal from my daughter's husband, the father of my granddaughter. But I believe God put Wren in my life for a reason that 8-year-old's courage saved us all. When you face family betrayal, you'll need 3 things: evidence, patience, and at least one person who believes you without question. Find your Vernon, listen to your Wren, and never stop fighting for truth. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced something similar? What would you have done differently? Please share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already subscribed to Revenge Dad for more stories like this one, your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. As a reminder, certain details in this story have been fictionalized for privacy and storytelling purposes, but the core message about recognizing and surviving elder abuse remains true.